And we're live.
Very good. We'll now resume our meeting of July 4th, regular council meeting. There was no report from closed session, so we will be moving into our public meeting. So I do need a resolution to open the public meeting. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Belch, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Report Planning 2022-37 Springville Heights Subdivision Application 15T211003 and Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application ZBA 0721. Public meeting. Ms. Ellis?
Mayor McFadden, members of council and members of the public and staff. Welcome to today's public meeting regarding the Springville Heights subdivision application, which is file number 15T-21003, and the associated zoning bylaw amendment application with file number ZBA-07-21. So to be clear, this public meeting is to cover both files. The purpose of today's public meeting is to provide information to interested members of the public, to council, to other staff members, to answer questions about the proposal and to hear public feedback and comments on the applications. Peterborough County is the approval authority for plans of subdivision applications. Ian Mudd is in attendance at the public meeting today to present information about the plan of subdivision application and to help us answer questions on that application. And I will be presenting the information specifically related to the zoning bylaw amendment. The applicant and their representatives are also here to answer questions about the applications as required. As per the requirements of the Planning Act, notice of this public meeting was circulated by first-class prepaid mail to all assessed persons within 120 meters or 400 feet of the subject lands. Notice was also provided to the required ministries and agencies via email and regular mail. Signs were posted on the property at the Ashley Crescent and Sharpline frontages, and the notice was posted on both the county and the township websites. Following the circulation of the public meeting, the county and the township have received written correspondence from a number of area residents. We've received correspondence to date from Bill Batten, Ann Cork, Penny Lovell, and Stacy and Kevin Poole. I've also had a question from Neil Cathcart about fencing. County, I just want everyone to be clear that county and township staff will be considering all of the written comments we've received to date, together with the comments that we received today and comments received prior to today's meeting and prior to this notice during the review of the applications. And a report will be coming back to the Council of the Township of Cavan-Monaghan with analysis of the application and recommendations to move forward. So at this point, I will turn it over to Ian Mudd, who will go over the details of the proposed plan of subdivision. And if it helps, Ian, Carly, if you could scroll down to, I think it's attachment number 2 in the report, which is the draft plan.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Go ahead, Mr. Mudd.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Karen has touched on a lot of the public notice requirements as required under the Planning Act, so I won't reiterate those. But we are dealing with plan of application 15T-21003. It was an application received from Woodview Properties. The application was deemed complete by the county on May 26 of 21. In attendance with me today is also Jim Whalen. He is the county council rep. He is the mayor of North Kawartha. And the way we have it set up at the county level is that a member of county council shall also be in attendance for the public meeting. The proposal before you is a 24-unit subdivision. It consists of 3 roads, internal roads, and a park block and a stormwater block. It will be privately serviced with water and private septic system. It is a 10.9 hectare parcel of land, and it fronts onto Cathcart Crescent, Ashley Crescent, as well as Sharp Line. In support of the application, we received the following studies: a planning justification report, a functional servicing report, stormwater component, servicing options study, environmental impact study, a stage 1-2 archaeological study, a geotechnical report, traffic impact study, as well as a hydrogeological study. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act to the required agencies. We did receive comments from Bell, Enbridge, Hydro One, the Public School Board, and Canada Post. None of them have cited any concerns at this point in time other than their standard conditions. We received correspondence from Curve Lake First Nations. They wanted direct consultation with the proponent, and the proponent has made those contacts with the First Nation. We did receive comments from the township, from both planning and your Public Works Department with respect to some design issues related to the development, and those were passed on to the developer. MTO had comments regarding the entrance and the road alignment, and the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority had comments regarding the wetland feature on the property in addition to stormwater. In February of this year, we did receive a revised copy of the subdivision plan, and that plan removed a road extension that was shown in the first phase of the plan, or first concept of the plan, that showed a road extension to lands to the west, I believe, that are owned by Mr. Neil Cathcart, so that has been removed. It incorporated a block for an intersection realignment, which is shown as block 29 on this plan that's on the screen right now. And it also looked at delineating the wetland boundary related to the parkland block. As noted by Ms. Ellis, we have received some public comments to date. At the county level, I've received them from Sandra Scholes, Stacy Poole and Cork, Bill Batten, Neil Cathcart, and Penny Logel. There seems to be two areas of concern that I've received in the correspondence so far. One relates to well water, or the potential impacts on existing residences and their well water, and the other relates to stormwater management and the potential impacts of how stormwater is going to be dealt with and the impacts that it'll have on area residents. So at this point in time, along with the municipality through your zoning bylaw, which I believe Karen is going to go through, we are seeking comments from the public. Once we have gone through the public process and we have had all of the issues addressed by the proponent, we would look to take a report forward to County Council for consideration with respect to this development. That will not occur until we receive essentially final draft plan conditions from all of the agencies. So the township is still one of those agencies that we require your draft plan conditions if you're in support of this development. So that's all I have at this point in time, Mr. Mayor, subject to any questions or questions from the public. Not sure if you want to coordinate that through zoning when Karen goes through that as well.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mudd. Ms. Ellis, do you wish to go through that now, or do you want me to open up? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public. So the associated zoning bylaw amendment application was deemed complete, and notice of that complete application was provided on June 14th of 2022. As drafted, the zoning bylaw amendment will change the zoning on the subject lands from the future development zone to the Hamlet residential zone, the Hamlet residential exception 19 zone, the open space exception 3 zone, the natural core zone, and the natural core exception 2 zone. If you could scroll down, Carly, to the draft zoning bylaw, to the map attached to that. Yep, keep going. Right there, that's perfect. So to be clear, single detached residential uses are permitted uses in the Hamlet residential and the Hamlet residential exception 19 zones. So the bulk of the property will be rezoned to a Hamlet residential or Hamlet residential exception zone. The minimum lot area and lot frontage requirements in the Hamlet residential and Hamlet residential exception 19 zone are 3,000 square meters or 3/4 of an acre and 20 meters or 66 feet respectively. The exception in the Hamlet residential exception 19 zone pertains to a regulation that restricts development related to the airport obstacle limit. So as proposed, The zoning bylaw amendment will permit construction to a maximum of 241.9 meters above sea level. The normal maximum in the township's zoning bylaw is 234.9 meters above sea level. The natural core zone, which will affect the blocks related to the wetland and the future road alignment, are proposed to be rezoned to the natural core zone and the natural core exception 2 zone. So the natural core zone permits primarily conservation uses. And for everyone's information, a conservation use is defined as an area of land that is generally left in its natural state and which is used for any combination for preservation, protection, or improvement of components of the natural heritage system or other lands for the benefit of man and the natural environment, and which may include as an accessory use, passive recreational uses, and buildings and structures. An example would be a nature interpretation center or a public information center. The natural core zone will apply to the wetland block closest to Cathcart Crescent, and the natural core exception 2 zone will apply to the remainder of the wetland block. In the natural core exception 2 zone, the uses will be limited to conservation uses, but buildings, structures, and swimming pools will not be permitted in that area. The open space exception 3 zone, which is the darker area at the south end of the site, applies to the proposed stormwater management facility. In this zone, no buildings or structures except essential structural works for flood control and or erosion or sediment control are permitted. Having said all of that, we can now open it up for questions, Mr. Mayor, and comments regarding the applications.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Thank you, Mr. Mudd. Any questions or comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor Graham.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor. Question can be for either Ian, Karen, or John, I guess. With regards to Mr. Cathcart's comments about the right to farm information being included in the subdivision agreement, with a lot of individuals coming to our community from more urban environments, I was just wondering if you could speak to what is being asked for and if that's the appropriate place for such a comment to be included, or how we can ensure that the understanding of those protections and those rights and entitlements for the operation of the agricultural lands to the west are going to be maintained, but also that, new residents that might not be familiar with the things like fertilizer and other, could potentially nuisance sense and farm operations that might impact their livability. Because we're getting, I don't know about every other member of council, but there's seemingly more questions / complaints with regards to behaviors or activities that people aren't familiar with and how it applies to their property and their rights.
Very good. Ms. Ellis or Mr. Mudd, who wants to take that?
I can go first if you want,
Okay.
and I can, through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, I can tell you that in previous plans of subdivision, the township has worked with adjacent agricultural property owners to specify what type of fencing should be installed between the residential plan of subdivision and the adjacent agricultural lands. We have also asked the county to impose as a draft plan condition a requirement that there be a condition on title, recognizing that people are moving into an agricultural area and that normal farm practices will continue to occur, and that those normal farm practices do include things like noise, odors, dust, fertilizer. So those are tactics we have used in the past to flag that they are essentially moving next door to an active farm, and that the expectation is that agricultural practice will continue. And please be aware that you may be impacted from time to time by noise, dust, odor, fumes, etc.
Deputy Mayor Graham, does that suffice, or do you want further from Mr. Mudd?
Just the only clarity I'm looking for, Karen, then is so we're incorporating that on the condition of title rather than as it was asked for in the subdivision agreement. Is that correct, or is the condition of title a part of what will be required in the subdivision agreement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Graham and members of council, it usually gets included in the subdivision agreement as well.
Okay, so we are doing it at both levels of operation. That sounds good. That sounds like it's all we can do, but I'm just curious for clarity on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Any other questions, comments from members of council before we open it up to the public? Oh, Councillor Huntley, go ahead.
Through you, Chair, to Miss Ellis or Mr. Mudd, I guess, is seeing as all this land was already future development, I'm guessing that the layout of this subdivision isn't a real surprise to anybody that, it was always kind of projected and designed in this way, as I can see that certain blocks seem to have been left open to allow road access and whatnot. I'm guessing that, we're not just forcing something in here. This was planned ahead of time.
Go ahead, Mr. Mudd.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, these lands, if I recall, were designated when the township did its new official plan back in 2015. The property fabric as it exists right now, as you've noted, it does recognize a 66-foot block that does lead it down to sharp lines. So I think as these lands had been developed in the past, there was a recognition by the property owner and by the municipality to leave enough room to allow for future internal expansion of the existing subdivision development and allow for a road network that would touch onto all 3 roads.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Yes, I know one of our constituents raised up a very good point about the existing wells on the properties adjacent to this development area. Should they be affected by the 24 additional wells that will be drilled, will there be any recourse for them?
Go ahead.
I can touch on that. So as a requirement for this subdivision development, there was a hydrogeological study that was identified at the pre-consultation stage, and it was undertaken by the proponent, and he may wish to speak to this further. However, that study was submitted in support of the development application. That study was peer reviewed by Stantec, who is the peer review consultant on behalf of the county, and they have found that the findings of that development are fairly solid, that this property can handle the development of 24 new dwellings. And it also acknowledges when they do that type of review, it looks at the existing wells in the area to determine, because obviously one of the key considerations that we want to have is that it's not going to impact the existing residences in the immediate area. So they've done that level of work. It's been done in accordance with Ministry of Environment guidelines, as is the requirement for those types of studies. With respect to any recourse, if there's any issues after the fact, to be quite honest with you, I've never run into that. My understanding is that there can be variable factors that determine what impact a well, whether or not existing wells in the area are dug wells, what aquifer that they're into. So there's often a bit of investigation work done on the part of the complainant to be able to show that the new subdivision has directly impacted their water source.
Very good. Is that good?
If I may add to that, Mayor McFadden, just-
Go ahead, Councillor. You got me confused. Go ahead, Ms. Ellis. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I just wanted to add to Ian's comments that when the applicant had a neighborhood meeting last year, the issue of the water supply did get raised by a number of area residents. And so I will let the applicant speak to it, but they have embarked upon a monitoring program to look at monitoring some existing wells in the area. And maybe they can speak further to the results of that monitoring program or what might happen in the future.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Councillor Shaw, was that adequate?
It covered a lot of the certain aspects of it that are official, but you did not really establish that there was any recourse should wells go dry. And in my own personal history, I have had this happen to me where I had a house with a well system and an adjacent well was put in for a municipal development. And I think there was 4 of the wells fairly close by. I know it cost me many thousands of dollars, but I had no recourse to go back to the township. And it was a municipal establishment at that point, a different municipality than this one. But nevertheless, these kind of issues can cost a tremendous amount of money. And frustration for the individuals involved. I believe there needs to be some level of recourse established, or and maybe even a fund that they could go to if they need to utilize.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. I guess to Mr. Mutter, Ms. Ellis, recognizing Councillor Shaw's concern, is there anything that we can, in fact, incorporate into that subdivision agreement relative to the dry wells?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that would be something that staff would have to take a look at and make a recommendation back to both Township Council and County Council.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, Councillor Shaw, for raising that issues, and it will be looked into and addressed. Any other questions from members of council before we open it up for the public? Okay, seeing none. We do have individuals that are attending that do have their hands up. I will start at the top and go down. Madam Clerk, our first individual with their hand up is Ron Davidson. When you let him in, I will be asking each individual just for confirmation of their name and their address, as it is a public meeting, but go ahead.
Mayor McFadden, Mr. Davidson has joined us.
Very good. Mr. Davidson, can you just confirm your name and confirm your address, please, for the clerk?
Yes, my name is Ron Davidson. My address is 265 Beatty Street, Owen Sound.
Did you get that, Madam Clerk?
For clarification, was that BD Street, 265 BT Street?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Very good. Welcome, Mr. Davidson. Proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, my name is Ron Davidson, and I'm a registered professional planner, and I'm representing today the owners of the subject lands. Joining with me on the line are Michael Davenport and Murray Davenport, the two engineers that are also working on this project. They did a lot of the heavy lifting, if you will. I'm just going to say a few words, and then we'll be available to answer questions, but I may just go right into asking in a minute Michael or Murray to address the question that was raised regarding the monitoring of groundwater. As you heard, there have been a series of background reports that were prepared in support of the application. I wrote a planning report myself that evaluates the proposed developments within the context of the county official plan, the township's official plan, and the provincial policy statements. And the report does demonstrate compliance with each of these planning policy documents. I think it's worth pointing out, making it abundantly clear here, and maybe this will help or maybe won't help with some of the neighbors' concerns, but the lands are designated settlement area in the county official plan, and they're designated hamlet in the local official plan. And to be clear, these lands are intended to be used for an urban use according to the county official plan, and more specifically for residential purposes according to the township's official plan. So there should be no surprise here if you've ever looked at the official plan that there would be a residential subdivision on this property. Now, of course, given that it's being serviced with private septic and private well, it has to be a very low density development, and that is what it's being proposed with single family dwellings, 24 of them. You've heard the county planner speak about some of the studies that were done, the hydrogeological study, which did address potential impact on groundwater. And it concluded by stating that there would be no impacts to the groundwater regime, and the 24 lot development serviced privately is suitable. And you also heard that the county had that study peer reviewed by an independent third party, and they agreed with the findings. And also worth mentioning, MTO again is on board, and so is the Conservation Authority, and concerns that those two agencies have been addressed. I think at this time I'm going to stop speaking. I'm going to ask Murray or Mike if they would do two things. One is to comment on the groundwater monitoring program, and then secondly, if they wouldn't mind advising whether or not that draft plan or the version that is shown on the screen now is the correct version, or if that was the second latest version, that would be good. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to hand it over to the engineers.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, can you let in both Mike Davenport and Murray Davenport, and we can confirm which one is going to speak, or maybe both?
To Mayor McFadden, Murray,
no.
and Mike have both joined us.
Very good. Murray and Mike, you are both available to speak. And if you just want to identify which one is going to speak to address the matters that were just raised. Very good. I see Murray's unmuted. Go ahead, Murray.
I'm going to pass it over to Michael. He's been talking to the hydrogeologists that are on as well today, and he can coordinate their comments.
Okay, very good. And apologies, I should have got name and address. Murray, I know it's Murray Davenport. Can you just provide your address for the clerk?
My address is 1715 Youngs Point Road, Lakefield, Ontario.
Very good. Thank you, Murray. Over to you, Mike. Same thing, name, address.
Mike Davenport. My address is 2390 Kennedy Drive in Cavan.
Very good. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so in terms of the monitoring program, Jason and Robert with GHD, I don't know all of the specifics, but a general idea is they put data loggers inside a number of the wells around the subdivision. And they've also tested a number of bacteria and turbidity and things like that inside of the wells to give us a baseline, which we're going to continue to monitor for the next year or so, depending on, when we can actually start building roads or moving earth or whatever. And that baseline is what they're going to use to determine in the future if we impact on the neighbors. And so we're all going to know pretty quickly if there's any sort of issues arising as a result of building houses or moving roads or drilling wells or things like that. The specifics, if we want to get into further detail, Jason or Robert could provide. But that's the overview of what the proposed monitoring program is all about.
Okay, very good. And I believe Murray, the other question was what relative to the version of the site plan that's before us today. Is that the most recent one?
So there's one further plan. It looks like, so where the parkland block is, lots 4, 5, and 6 have now been extended into the parkland block at the request of the township, so that anything to do with environmental issues of that wetland, the setbacks, they're all contained on private property, not on township property.
Yeah, very clear. Excellent.
And then I think stormwater management was raised. I can quickly address that as well. There's a number of homeowners on Sharp Line that have concerns with the existing amount of water that drains onto their land. What the proposed stormwater management block will do is it's going to, via roadside ditches, we're going to capture and convey a lot of the water that's currently just draining into their backyard. And we're going to control it in the stormwater management block, and then we're going to release it away from their houses towards highway number 7, which is that extension there on the east side. So in terms of the flooding they experience now, after we build this pond, there's going to be less water coming their way.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, I will move to the next individual on the attendee list, which is Mark, identified as Mark Andrews.
One moment, Mayor McFadden. I will move some of the other attendees back and I will move him over. Mayor McFadden, Mr. Andrews has joined us.
Very good. Mark, just confirmation for your name and your address, please. You are currently muted. Madam Clerk, are you able to? There we go.
Yep, I just did.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome, Mark. Just your name and your address, just to confirm.
So Mark Andrews, I'm at 1921 and 1922 Ashley Crescent. And what I want to bring up is we're talking about the wells, and already it hasn't been brought up by Karen from the last time we did a meeting with the builder, but in 2020, the builder did a test hole down in lot 15, excuse me, and that lot, or that test well has been draining water. It drains water 24/7. Since that well was drilled, 1922 Ashley Crescent, which is just across the road from me, where Harley Cathcart lives, he has a 42-foot well, and that 42-foot well now does not have the ability to replenish the water that's pumped out whenever he runs any water appliance or a hose or anything. And that happened the very next year. So he's at 42 feet deep. I'm at 47 feet deep. So back in 1988, when I had my house built, and Faulkner Well Drilling was the company that did the well for me, they told me that you don't have to worry about anybody that drills a well above you, but you have to be concerned about everybody that drills wells below you. And if everybody drills below me and they all have more water lines that are draining from the water table 24/7, that has me thinking it's going to drop the water table even where I am, to the point that not only is 1922 now needing a deeper well, but also 1921 will also need a deeper well. And it's just, who pays for that? Because right now, 1922 Ashley Crescent needs a deeper well.
Thank you, Mark. Just a question of clarification on that. You indicated that for 1922, that when anything water related is run, i.e. the hoses, etc., that the water supply isn't sufficient. So just for clarity, is that the main water supply for the house? In other words, like anything inside, washers and dishwashers and sinks? And
that's right.
Okay. All right.
That's right. The well at 1922 is the well for the washers, the washing machine, the hot water tank, and any outside hose to water the garden with, etc. Like that. That's the well for the house.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for that clarification. I would look then again back to the Ms. Mudd or Ms. Ellis, if you can either address or just take into consideration those comments. Mr. Mudd.
Yes, through you, Mr. Ware. So at this point in time, as we mentioned, the hydrogeological study that was being done in support of it did look at surrounding development in the area. My understanding is nothing is being identified through that study at this point. So obviously there's some assumptions being made by Mr. Andrews that, his well needs to be deepened at this point in time, but I don't think we'll be able to substantiate that until the development moves forward. And maybe what he wants to do, if he hasn't already, is be part of that monitoring process that Mr. Davenport mentioned, just so they can get a baseline on their well and determine if there is impacts associated with the development.
Okay, very good. And do we happen to know whether 1922 is included in that study or not, or whether it could be included?
I would have to.
No, 1922 was added into the study.
It is. Okay, very good. Excellent. And just for clarity, you indicated that it's running low while is it just running low during these tests? I wasn't clear whether it is left running all the time and that's why it's low, or whether it's running low during these testing periods. I just wasn't clear. Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No. So since that test well was drilled in lot 15 in 2020, ever since then, the well at 1922 has lost the ability to recover the water as fast as what the pump had been pumping for the previous 20 years. So the well recovers, but the recovery time now from what it used to be is not there. So you can run the well dry in about 10 minutes worth of running water straight. The well will run dry. And then it will take at least another 10 minutes or more to recover the full depth of well water that it comes to.
Okay, very good.
So that's my concern, is just as these holes get drilled below us, and they too are no doubt going to have drain lines on the top of their well, running out water from the pressure of the water in the land down below, that over time, that's just going to drop the water table up above them, where now our wells are getting shallower and the pressure to replenish the water is also going to get lessened.
Okay, understood. So you're saying just at the static point when it's not during a test load or anything that's being run on these specific wells, you're just saying the well's been drilled, and ever since it's been drilled, this occurs all the time, not just during the test load.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions from members of council just for clarification or on that before we move to the next one? If not, Mark, I do thank you for your comments, and I will move down. I don't see anybody else with their hand up currently in attendees. If there's any individuals wishing to speak or provide comment further to what's already been stated, please raise your hand. Okay, I do have an additional one. Madam Clerk, Ann Cork has her hand raised.
Junior Mayor McFadden, Ms. Cork has joined us.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Cork. If you can just confirm your name and provide your address, please. Your mic is open, Anne. Oh, now it's muted. Now it's open.
Okay. Ann Cork at 1980 Cathcart. I am part of the well monitoring program right now, but as Mr. Mudd was saying, they have all these hydrogeological reports and so on that suggest that that piece of land will be able to support all these wells. Well, if they're so sure about these reports, then why isn't there some sort of recourse, or as Bill Shaw was talking about, perhaps some sort of fund in the event that someone does have an issue with the well, as Harley is doing now?
Okay, very good. I know Mr. Mudd spoke to that specifically, taking those comments back for consideration. I don't believe Mr. Mudd's going to have anything further on it, but I do know obviously that's been the central focus point of today's discussion relative to the well monitoring and the availability. But Mr. Mudd, go ahead if you have anything additional.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, I committed to do. We'll investigate what the options are. We'd probably have a discussion with our peer review consultant and the developer, and we'd probably reach out to the Ministry of Environment staff as well to determine what type of recourse, if any, and how that is adequately addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Mudd. Anything further, Ms. Cork?
Well, you got my comments in my letter the 29th of June, so I don't think you want me to read them all out there. But one of the last things that I mentioned was the fact that when I moved here, there were 24 homes on Cathcart and Ashley, and with all the development going on the east side, and then another 24 in this new subdivision, we're going to be up to 60 homes, which is like almost a threefold increase. At what point, when you get a plan of subdivision, does the township say the developer needs to provide services? Or at what point does the township decide they need to provide services for these homes?
Mr. Mudd or Ms. Ellis?
I might defer to Ms. Ellis for this, but ultimately that is a municipal decision. It is local piece of infrastructure, and it's a decision that has to be made by the township if they want to provide water or sewer to a particular area of the municipality. I don't know if Ms. Ellis has anything to add.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, to members of council and to Ms. Cork. I think historically, the township we have full piped water and sewer in Millbrook, and we have studied the implementation of additional piped services in Fraserville at one point, but that idea has been abandoned. I think as long as people's infrastructure in terms of wells and septic continue to function in accordance with the current MOEC requirements, then there is no impetus for the township to investigate providing full municipal services at this location. I can tell you that the proposal you see before you today will complete the hamlet designation in the Springville area, south of Stewart Line, west of Highway 7. There is no new additional hamlet designation in this area at this time. So, and to the best of my knowledge, there are no plans by the township to consider full municipal services in this area as of today.
Very good.
And we're not aware further to that of there being, like, we are aware of the one issue on Cathcart Crescent with the well, but other than that, I don't believe that anybody else has expressed a problem or an issue with their existing well or septic system.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Very good. Anything further, Ms. Cork?
No, I would assume that all my comments will be taken into consideration, and I will get a reply onto this letter.
Mr. Mudd or Ms. Ellis, do you wish to explain the responses to the letters?
Through you, Mayor McFadden, to members of council and members of the public. So yes, all of your comments will be taken into consideration. They will be documented and reviewed and analyzed and discussed with the applicant and between the county and the township. They will also form the basis of our recommendations to council in terms of, do we support the application? If we do, what kind of draft plan conditions would we like to see implemented as part of the approvals process? You will not get an individual response to your comments. Historically, we just haven't operated like that, but we can put you on a list. If you would like to get notice of the decision on any of the applications, you need to make that request to the county and the township. You will be put on the list and we provided with additional information as the applications move forward.
I believe also, in addition to that, as part of the report when it's going forward, there would be a table, I recall. In that table would be comments that have been made throughout this process, and then there'd be a field that would indicate what the response specifically to it was. So although it's not an individual letter, all of the comments are put together and in that format, so they are provided back. Correct? Okay, very good. Anything further, Ms. Cork?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Our next individual with their hand raised is Mary Ann Foley. So I'll give Madam Clerk an opportunity to let Mary Ann Foley in. Welcome, Mary Ann Foley. You are still muted, and when you start, if you could just confirm your name and your address, please.
Hi, it's William Foley, her husband.
That's why I always confirm on Zoom, because I don't know what names are coming up. So thank you very much, Foley, and your address.
I'm at 1748 Sharp Line. And my concern is this block 26 for the wastewater. My well is right on that line fence, and I want to know, how are we going to maintain that I'm not going to have runoff into my well from this and leach down in and contaminate my well. And I'm not the only one. I've got all my neighbors here. That's where our wells all are, right on along that line fence.
Very good. Excellent question. Member of staff to address or take into consideration. Ms. Ellis or Mr. Mudd?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the design of the stormwater management plan is reviewed by the Conservation Authority as well as the Township's Public Works Department. It has to meet design standards in accordance with, again, the Ministry of Environment requirements. Mr. Davenport, both Mike or Murray, I'm not sure if they are engineers of record and would have been involved in the specific design of this feature. I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, if they have any sort of detailed information. It goes beyond my capacity as a planner. It's more of an engineering discussion. I'm not sure if they have any information that could satisfy Mr. Foley with respect to its design capacity.
Okay, very good. I will look to the attendee list. Okay, we have Mike Davenport. If you could let him back in, please, Ms. Page, to address that concern.
Mr. Mayor, if I can jump in here for 2 seconds, I just want a clarification. I believe the speaker, and I forgot, sorry, I missed your name, referred to it as a wastewater management. I think it's actually stormwater, right? And I think that's a huge differentiation. I think we should make sure we clear up.
Correct. Stormwater.
Mike Davenport. So just to respond, currently the farmlands slope towards the lots on Sharp Line. So if the farmer, for instance, spreads manure, uses fertilizer, whatever they put on there during their normal farm operations, all of that is heading towards the Sharp Line lots. So I completely understand the issues they're raising. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut off the water that's flowing directly over top of their lands. Through low impact development, we're going to on site at each lot, we're going to direct rainwater into the ground, and from the roads, we're going to direct the water from the majority of the development through the stormwater management block. We're going to hold it there, and we're going to slowly release it towards highway number 7. So it should improve any sort of contaminants on runoff into their lands. It will certainly lower surface water runoff onto the properties on Sharp Line there, and it's going to direct it around through low impact development. The water is going to be directed into the ground as well to help recharge the groundwater. So the proposed development should be a bonus to the people living on Sharp Line from a stormwater standpoint and contaminants running towards their land standpoint.
Good, thank you, Mike. And Councilor Huntley, your concern was certainly addressed. It's not waste, it is the stormwater. With that, sorry, I'm going back. Will, did that answer your question? Did you have any further follow-up?
Well, to some point, but we'll see what happens when this all takes place, right? We'll see if it we'll see if it stands up.
Your concerns have certainly been raised and documented by both Mr. Mudd and Ms. Ellis.
Okay.
Very good. I will go back to the attendees then. I do not see any further hands up. If you wish to speak to this application, please raise your hand prior to council consideration of the report. Okay, we have Mark Andrews, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Andrews has joined us again.
Very good. Welcome back, Mark. You are currently muted.
Most unmuted. Okay. Yes, it's Mark Andrews again, 1921, 1922 Ashley Crescent. So I've raised this point in the last time there was a meeting when the builder was proposing the plan, but I raised it to the council person at the time about Ashley Crescent's state of condition. It's a 34-year-old street that's already breaking down, and a few years ago when 1917 Ashley Crescent was built, there was heavy dump trucks, a couple of floats came in from Drain Brothers, and just the sheer size, mass of those trucks was enough to actually break the asphalt then. And now there's at least 250 feet of seriously cracked up road that isn't going to sustain any more heavy equipment on it, as well as this winter past. When they were clearing snow in February, a grader came down, and when it was doing the turn on Ashley Crescent, coming back out to go east into Cathcart, the plow blade actually just started peeling the road off. So they had to come back and they patched it up. But it's just for the future, who's going to pay to replace Ashley Crescent when it just fails? Because that's what will happen. It's 34 years old already of a road. So it's just, I don't want to pay extra to replace a road for a proposed subdivision site that's going to get built and that's going to see all this heavy traffic on it. It's something that I don't care to have happen at all.
Very good. Thank you,
So-
Mark. I've got the two planners that may be able to speak to the application relative to the subdivision, but I do also have our Director of Public Works, Mr. Hancock, which may be able to address it, from our long-term capital needs in addition to the development that's taking place, as well as any security. So I'm not sure, it could fall upon each of them. I see Ian has removed his mute, so I'll let him speak first.
Just a very quick response about the subdivision agreement, Mr. Mayor. The municipality does have the ability to identify a construction access route. So that would be done through your public works staff to identify where they want specific access into the development to happen during the construction period for that specific purpose of making sure that the roads aren't impacted by the development. So I would leave it with Mr. Hancock to provide further response.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mudd. Mr. Hancock, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Generally, the condition of the roadways are looked at during the engineering design period of the subdivision. For example, if Ashley Crescent is deteriorated, then we would probably look as a possible upgrade to the roadway that would be completed at the time of construction of the roads within the subdivision. This would be an item we would include in the subdivision agreement, and it usually would become a cost-sharing arrangement probably between the developer and the township, and that is yet to be worked out. So we usually look at the existing condition, we look at what might happen to it with increased traffic. And as Mr. Mudd has indicated, the location of haul routes and what they call building routes, the subdivision, are pre-designated. So we do try to keep them isolated to certain areas of roadways. But if there is damage completed to the roadways, that will fall back on the developer as his responsibility. So we will look at that. The other comment I was going to make is related to the stormwater management pond. It was raised and Mr. Davenport spoke to it. I've not seen the details of the pond do not indicate to me that the depths should be very close to where the wells are. And it is a stormwater pond with water quality, so it should improve some of the water that might be getting into the wells presently. So that's just a comment related to the stormwater management system. But the roads will become a detail of the subdivision agreement.
Apologies, it's a little easier to talk when I've got my mute off. Back to Mr. Andrews, did that assist with your question?
Okay, so that would all happen when the building is in process. I mean, if the subdivision goes ahead and they do start using the road, it will be dealt with as it happens, not years after the fact. And it will become the responsibility of the builder of the subdivision to have the road repaired or replaced.
I think I've indicated that we would review the road prior to. We would look at the road afterward, and if there's deterioration, that falls back to the developer. And generally in a situation like this, there is a realignment that's looked at for Ashley, so we have to take that into account. But generally, we would try to upgrade the roads in the area as part of the development because it makes for, more fitting with the community. And we would look at that as a budget line. But generally, any damage caused to our existing roadways does fall back to the developer.
Okay, so when you're saying, you just said too, to update the road or bring the road to a condition equal to the rest of the community that was just built in here. So if this community has street lights and sidewalks, what happens then to Ashley Crescent? Because right now, Ashley Crescent, it's just a 1,000-foot cul-de-sac with no street lights, no sidewalks or anything, and that's fine. But it's just the new proposed subdivision. I believe they were going to put in sidewalks and street lights. So if
Yeah,
you
but-
were going to try and match it to that, where does that money come from? Is that going to come from township monies, or is that again on the builder to do it?
Well, I think Mr. Andrews, there's a couple of different issues there. One, if we're looking to upgrade the standards being street light or sidewalk on the existing roadway to tie into a new development, that would be an improvement to our existing infrastructure. If there's damage or works required on a roadway caused by the developer, we would look to the developer to do that. So generally, we will work with the developer to have a complete package, but he is responsible for some parts of it, and we would be responsible for the others.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just I wanted to clarify that when you mentioned it. It
Okay.
just made me consider it. So, okay, thank you.
Very good. Any further question, Mr. Andrews?
Well, you see, the thing, I don't really follow this all. Like, since you guys did the official plan in 2015, and the majority of everybody who lives here on Sharp Line, Ashley Crescent, the highway, Cathcart Crescent, nobody seemed to even know the plan was being done back in 2015. That although it was stated, it was put in the Peterborough This Week or in a local paper. It just surprises me how so many people missed that notification to even know about it. But also, we come forward now to where we are in 2000, when it all started in 2020 about this building. How one person who doesn't care to be a farmer can meet another person who's got monies to want to build a subdivision. That's all it takes is just two people to go ahead and just wreck an entire existing quality farmland and just turn it into subdivisions. I just have a bit of problem understanding how can be so easily done.
Yeah, if I could just provide some clarification on it. So the official plan process is a multi-year process. So it's not that you missed one meeting, a reminder. The official plan process originally started about, I believe, 2008, but I stand to be corrected. And it was adopted by the council from 2010 to 2013. Around 2013, it then went off. There was some objections to it, of which one was over in your particular area at the time. But that must be the date that they're referring to relative to the 2015 date. But it was over the span of 5 years that official plan at the township before it was approved. So that was entirely in a public process. Moving forward, to bring you up to date with more relevant, the county has just submitted their official plan for approval adoption by the province. That has been, and Mr. Mudd, you can certainly correct me, but I believe it's been a 3 or 4 year project to get the official plan for the county into the province. Township of Cappamonigan has chosen to do their own official plan, which must be in conformity with the upper tier county. However, the individual settlement areas, et cetera, will be up for further discussion by the township. And so once the official plan by the county comes back from approval from the province, and we are guessing, but say 6 months to a year, then the township has 1 year to bring its official plan into conformity. So throughout that year, it will be a public process. It is very important to provide your input during that time, because at the end of that time, then the township will have an updated new official plan. And if there's going to be any lands designated around you specifically for future development, it would be in that document that they would exist. the issue that you end up running into is if they're adopted in that specific document, as you've seen, it can be a decade before anything actually shovels hit the ground in your area, but it was decisions that were made a decade before. So I know it doesn't sound like a simple process, and it certainly isn't, but I just wanted to reassure you, it's not the matter of a couple landowners getting together and deciding they're going to do a subdivision.
Okay. No, it still surprises me at this day and age that for the amount of farmland being turned into being paved over every year. And I mean, since Doug Ford's come in, it's even happening quicker now because he softened up some of the rules, I believe. But it's just at a point when we're talking about food shortages and everything else, we're gonna just go ahead and keep wrecking quality farmland. I just find that surprising.
Yes, I think you'll find with the big changes since the 2013 plan too is the focus on municipal services. And so it's more compact development, but you don't end up with 1 and 2 acre lots as you've been seeing. So moving forward, and only Mr. Mudd can speak to this, you will see a commitment throughout the entire county of designating the residential growth is primarily going to be focused on the municipalities and the settlement areas that already have existing municipal services. So that's to get away from that. That's for higher density developments, which reintroduces a whole other discussion on higher density developments and discussion. But yeah, you're correct. That's where the focus is, and it's certainly in line with the 1.5 million more homes that the provincial government wants to see over the course of the next. So I hope that was
so with.
Yep, go ahead.
So with the whole thing about right now, I live on a cul-de-sac, so I don't have a lot of through traffic. Excuse me, and it's just when if this goes through, and I do have a through street now. Like I know I have met people who live out by the Millbrook, what's been going on out in Millbrook. And they tell me now when you look at the traffic flowing along the road to get out to the 115 because there's so many more commuters living there, but it's not uncommon anymore to see people doing 110 kilometers an hour out there going down to the 115 to get on it. And it's just even here where I live, when people don't know it's a cul-de-sac, they come down Ashley Crescent pretty fast. And it's a sudden break, but when it becomes a through road, it will be something new that I've never had to deal with before is through traffic. But the concern is safety is where I live. So that's that's a thing that I consider going forward as well is the traffic issue.
Absolutely. Understood. And we certainly follow up with with our local police that are very proactive on being out within the community.
So Karen Ellis told me last year when we were talking, because my concern was about taxes going up with these homes coming in because they're all going to be over $1 million is the talk. And at the time, Karen was stating that MPAC, it's done by a whole region, not by a smaller area, but the whole region has to go up in order to affect taxes increasing. But when you do look at what housing prices have become in Cavan the last several years, these houses coming in will help with that whole regional price picking up. That I really believe that we will see taxes increase with another $24 million homes coming in to impact the whole price of the whole region's just going up and up and up. That for me, I don't want to pay more taxes. And I don't want to see more houses coming in that's going to have an impact on that taking place. So.
Very good. I do see a hand. Deputy Mayor Graham, go ahead.
Thanks. Just a couple points. I don't know. I don't think anything might appease you, Mark, but with regards to just being heard and a bit of this circumstance. So with regards to settlement areas, the township and the county OPs all have to be consistent with higher levels of government like regulations, like the province with the PPS and the growth plan, et cetera. They dictate that where and how much densities and areas that can obtain growth and expand or build more houses to it. They tell us exactly what we need to do or how much lands we need to identify. And we're really restricted as to where that can go. And we can't even have the opportunity to establish new settlement areas if we wanted to. So where they exist is kind of, you're at the mercy of, to be consistent with provincial legislation, there's a certain amount of growth that has to go there. But as the mayor pointed out, with the increase in focus on service settlement areas, that's why you're seeing a lot of the growth go to the Millbrook area where there is servicing. So a lot of the hamlet and the growth allocation that the province is going to provide to the county is going to mostly exclusively go to settlement areas, but primarily those that already have servicing, and we're nowhere close to getting servicing up to Cathcart and Ashley Crescent. So maybe that will sort of be somewhat of an understanding, but we don't have the ability to really determine. So just say, pick a perfect parcel of land somewhere. We can't create a new settlement area there. We don't have the legislative authority to do so. So we're kind of working within the puzzle pieces that we have. And in order to be consistent, you know, a lot of these documents and a lot of these other overarching documents that we have to be in accordance with are not built with rural municipalities and growth in rural municipalities in mind. And we've asked for it to be withdrawn from certain elements of that policy as well. And we haven't gotten anywhere from any form of higher level of government, whether it's Doug Ford or other ones prior to. So they just don't build a lot of documentations and provincial policy that speak to the realities of rural growth, especially in agricultural communities. And the only other comment with your last comment with regard to taxation, yes, new homes build new infrastructure, and new infrastructure is the responsibility of the municipality. But with MPAC's assessment, you know, the 5 people on this call have a determination as to, and obviously working with staff, determine what the overall budget is and what we require to bring in from taxation to cover our costs and do the works that we need to do. MPAC just establishes the percentage of which is your property share. So when taxes go up, you know, the 3 or 4% of the, I think the last few years we've been in the 2% sort of area. That's what we control. What MPAC does is establish the rates by which that's divided with the properties. So it's not as though more houses are bringing, property values are going up, but more properties are also coming online. And if newer properties have a higher value, then their tax rate is higher than those with a lower value. So the whole pie gets divided by what MPAC tells us, and we don't have control over it. But it doesn't essentially, just because your property's worth more, it might change the percentage of tax or the rate at which the property value is taxed at, but it doesn't essentially mean the taxes are going up. I hope that's clear enough.
Very good. Thank you. Very well articulated, Deputy Mayor Graham. Mr. Andrews, any further questions? You are muted, and so I don't know whether you're asking a question or whether there is. Okay, there you go.
Okay, so yeah, like you say, it's so it's more other other people higher up or designate or telling you where, like, you need to build something, you need to build it somewhere, and like do it. So it's not like this is a scheme to just let's populate all the borderlands with Peterborough so they can't annex any of our any land from Cavan.
You're getting there, Mr. Andrews, and it's certainly a discussion that I'm sure Mr. Mudd, after having gone through the county official plan and allocations of all of the growth and all the various studies for the last 3 years, could certainly have a very lengthy conversation with you on this. But yes, short answer is those allocations come from higher up, and we have to figure out how to do it.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome. I do have a hand up, Madam Clerk. Murray Davenport would like to speak again, please.
Through Mayor McFadden, Mr. Davenport has joined us.
Very good. Welcome back. Murray, go ahead. You are currently muted.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. A couple points. Ann Cork mentioned that she had a June 29th letter. We don't have the benefit of that letter to know what her concerns are. With Mark Andrews' comments about the development of these lands, our firm worked with Harley Cathcart, Mark's father-in-law, in developing Ashley Crescent to the extent that it is today. Ashley applied to the township, Harley applied to the township to do additional development by severance and was refused. So in effect, what we are doing with this plan of subdivision is putting in place Harley Cathcart's dream for the lands that we're currently developing. Those are my comments at the moment.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Davenport. I will now go back to the attendees. If there's anybody else wishing to speak to the application, please raise your hand and we can let you in to speak. I see Ms. Cork wishing to speak for a second time. Go ahead, Ms. Cork. You are currently muted.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Graham, for all that clarification. That was very enlightening. I agree with Mark as far as, building over farmland is not a good thing to do. And I certainly hope that, as Karen said, this is the end of the development in this area. One thing I wanted to ask about is there's a meeting about the official plan amendment expanding the community improvement plan. And one of the stated objectives is to promote, I quote, promote renewal of older housing stock together with improving the range and diversity of housing options. And yet this plan of subdivision has nothing to do with that whatsoever. What they're going to be building is, they say they're middle-class homes, but in fact, I don't think that's going to be the case based on the homes that I've seen on Kennedy and in Mount Pleasant. So how do we relate this community improvement plan to future development?
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Graham. I see your hand.
Yep, through you. I don't want to, we will have a discussion about that report. The community improvement plan is what's being proposed is sort of an expansion for incentive programs that are modest in value, money-wise, to try to motivate and support, whether in the case of what you're discussing from the certain programs, they're very small, modest programs that sort of are attempting to incentivize redevelopment or the creation of, and certain grants, and there's a list of them in the document. Certain grants speak to supporting developments for things like even accessibility, building to an accessible standard, or creation of secondary suites, things to that extent. But the monies involved are very modest. The majority of the programs are more geared to individuals taking advantage of them or smaller developments. With regards to the supports for intensification, the intensification is really a part of various levels of policy that are really kind of dependent on the property ownership of what's existing within that plot of land for the development per se. A lot of, like I said, the secondary suites is really the keystone piece that is really the only thing that the CIP really can enhance, other than, small other programs. But we're talking no more than a couple of thousands of dollars for supports. That's what I mean. It's not as, we're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars when it comes to the CI program itself. And when it comes to reintensification, what you're going to find is a lot of that is spoken to existing settlement areas, specifically urban settlement areas that have servicing again, that what they're looking to do is redevelop and intensify existing lots or the amount of residences that are existing, where you might have let's say you have acre lots with bungalow homes, whereas if the owners of those properties wanted to build a small duplex or apartment complex, then that's the sort of things where reintensification would occur. So it's really up to the property owner and what they want to pursue. And again, it again becomes of what's allowable. And in order for our official plan, both at the county and at the township, that one that will be developed over the next few years, we again have to be consistent with the allowances in the upper levels of policy, and they really dictate what can and cannot be done. But I'm not sure you might want the amount of density without the servicing to support it, because the well water issues like you're talking about, if you're providing more of that service to more residents at a more dense build, well, then you're going to have more water usage, and that problem might be exacerbated. So we might want to be careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Graham. Any further question, Ms. Cork?
Yeah. In terms of future developments like this, what is the council's take on the responsibility to current residents? The people that have been here for 30, 40 years paying taxes.
I'm sorry, so I'm missing the actual question though.
Well, current residents have been here paying taxes for many years, and now we're going to have a new development. Is there anything in your plans to make sure that the new development enhances the current community? I say this because I have a new house across the street from me, which is a huge monstrosity, which does not fit in with the subdivision at all. It's just, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So is there any thought on the part of the planning department as to whether the new development and the size, the type of homes will enhance the area rather than detract?
I see Ms. Ellis is unmuted. Go ahead, Ms. Ellis.
To you, Mayor McFadden, to members of council and Ms. Cork, the planning department does have regard for those things that you have asked about. It is quite common for the township to ask for architectural control guidelines so that we can control the materials and the how the subdivision looks in terms of the architectural design. The size of a home is dictated by the zoning bylaw regulations in terms of setbacks from the property lines, lot coverage, the requirement for landscaped open space, etc. I will admit to you, though, that it is a very challenging situation because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So what you might consider appealing, someone else might not like. So what the township tries to do is to regulate to make sure that we don't get the same house with the same colors on every single lot. We try to get a mix of styles and types so that it's that it does fit in with the existing neighborhood to the best of our ability. Mm-hmm. Having said all of that, though, please remember that people still, when they buy a lot, it's a regular lot, they have the ability, as long as they can meet building code and the zoning bylaw regulations, they can build what they like. So, but we will work with the developer to do the architectural guidelines, and we hear you loud and clear that, and so we will be talking to Mr. Davenport about you know how we can manage this to move closer to what the community thinks is appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, everybody missed the boat on this house across the street from me. I think it probably gets pretty close to the height restriction, for one thing. It's a huge, ugly house, and it just looks so awful.
Yeah. So just to be clear, through you, Mayor McFadden, to members of council and members of the public, when you have a lot that is not part of a plan of subdivision, we do not regulate what the house looks like. We do regulate the height, setbacks, those types of things, but we do not regulate.
We don't regulate anything to do with whether or not it suits the existing homes. I suggest that's something that perhaps should be considered.
I hear your comments, but the reality of the circumstance is property rights are property rights, you know, both ways. And we might, you know, we also have to have, like I said, in being consistent with higher levels of policy, you know, we can't ask for things and controls that wouldn't stand up in the higher courts, right? Like simply they get challenged and it costs the taxpayers, to go back to Mark's comment, we have to pay the lawyer fees just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's not cheap to go to court, and lose is even doubly worse because there can be punitive damages thereafter. So our policies and our staff go to great lengths to work with as creative and extensive as controls as we have that are legally permissible. And I think there's lots of times where I ask questions about things that I realize that are not legal. And, you know, it's for the best or for the worst in certain cases, and we just try to make the best of it together. But to Karen's point, like, we are very restricted. And even with a lot of these components that are applying to subdivisions, it usually is a part of a negotiation with the developer. I mean, even on larger subdivisions, there are certain things that we can demand and are defensible in court, but a lot of the content is it's just fodder for negotiation. And so we have to work with developers to make the best outcomes, but the best outcomes aren't without compromises on both sides.
For sure, yeah. It sounds like when you're talking about the actual plans that there's too many levels of government involved in creating these official plans. It must be a real challenge. But one thing I might say is that since the construction has started on the east side of Cathcart, it's just like living in a construction zone constantly. And we've had, trucks parked on both sides of the street. We've had, my neighbor has been blocked in, unable to leave for work because there was a truck making deliveries across the road, parked across her driveway. It's just been a zoo here for, the past year pretty much. And I guess we're going to get more of it if this new development gets approved.
Okay, very good, Ms. Quirk. And on that note too, by all means, you can certainly call in if there is an issue relative to traffic. It's certainly that we can deal with on an ongoing basis if it is there, and we have dealt with it in other situations
thanks, Scott.
across the township for sure. So by all means,
Thank
do
you,
not
Mr.
hesitate
Smith.
to contact the office.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, I do have another hand then, Madam Clerk. Mark Andrews wishes to provide further comment.
Mr. Andrews has joined us.
Go ahead, Mr. Andrews.
Yes, sorry to come in again, but as to the whole thing about future expansion on another additions to even on top of what this subdivision is being proposed. But I remember in the last meeting, we were looking at, Neil Cathcart raised the question about what he didn't like between, there was a road extension going between lot 23 and 24 going towards his property, his farmland. And he didn't want to see that at all put into the plan. And I see it's been closed up now, but now the road extension is going north between lots 1 and 24, going into the farm field to the north of it. And that, again, it raises the question of more houses coming into being built, more wells being drilled, and again, having more impact on the water table. That's my first statement, is just, this is still there still has to be a road extension going somewhere so that this subdivision is not all locked in. It can still grow. That's the first question. The second question is with house sizes in this new subdivision, it was said to me in the past after the first meeting we had with the builder and his plans, but I believe he can only build a certain base of house, but he could build it as high as he wanted. So he could go 3-level houses. Is that true?
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. As far as the height restriction, I believe that's been answered already. It is under control. Ms. Ellis, you may wish to provide comment to that, but I do see the builder, Murray Davenport, also wishes to respond. So I will let you go first, Ms. Ellis, and then Mr. Davenport can certainly go into that.
Thank you, Mayor McFadden, to members of council as well, and Mr. Andrews. So the road extension to the north is a change from the original design. Mr. Cathcart did express concern with the road potentially going to the west. So the applicant changed it to go to the north. That northern extension is shown because through the county official plan update process, the county did receive comments that the landowner to the north is interested in an expansion of the hamlet designation, which would permit additional residential development. That additional hamlet designation was not approved by the county, to the best of my knowledge, but the road extension is still showing. And in conversations with the developer, we have talked about having that road extension shown on the plan, but we are talking about a temporary cul-de-sac and then a time limit. Should the lands to the north not be designated for growth in the future after a certain timeline, then that road extension would be removed and that property sold or deeded to lots 1 and lots 24.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. I do want to give Mr. Davenport an opportunity to provide response. Madam Clerk, if you wouldn't mind letting Mr. Davenport in to provide a response to that question, please.
Mr. Davenport has joined us, Mayor McFadden.
Thank you. Welcome back, Murray.
Okay. During our neighborhood meeting, William DeVoe, who owns the lands to the north, requested that the road extension be provided to that lot line. That was to address an issue that was raised during the neighborhood meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Murray. Mark, any further questions? You are currently muted. Just if you're trying to speak.
No, I believe that's everything. I was just very curious to see the road extension going a different way. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Enders. And I do want to thank all of those that have participated and provided comment back. I want to thank you to the builder developers as well and to staff. I do not see any further hands. So with that, consideration of the report from members of council. Deputy Mayor Graham, go ahead.
Sorry, Scott, I was just going to, through you, Mayor, I was going to just echo the thanks because I could tell you, when in one of Murray's earlier comments, there was a discussion about, not participating. This is I think a much smaller lot subdivision than the one we've most recently discussed in Millbrook and approved. And there's been far more participations and comments received on this small application than there was on one that's about more than 10 times the size. So we do really appreciate the time and effort it does take to participate, but it is very valuable information and a very valuable perspective, but I just wanted to continue to thank them for making that effort. It is appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. Very good. And with that, for consideration of the report, Deputy Mayor Graham, would you make a motion to receive the report, accept the recommendation made by Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded by Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
You're muted, Councillor Belch. I saw the lips moving. It looked like a yes, but just to confirm.
We.
Thank you. We have unanimous. Very good. Okay, that motion is approved. And with that, I'll get a quick resolution to close the public meeting. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Belch, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Are we sure we're supposed to be closing it just yet?
Yes, we are.
Yes, Councillor Huntley, we are. And then we're going to open it up again for a new public meeting for the CIP.
But
Okay,
before we
then.
do
Yes.
that, before we do that, Madam Clerk, I got a unanimous yes, we have closed the public meeting. And now we got a unanimous, we're going to call for a recess and be back in about 3 minutes.
Sounds good.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm ready. Once everybody is ready to reconvene, we got 4 counselors, 5 counselors, and the clerk. Actually, I don't know that. Do we have Councillor Huntley? Yes, we have Councillor Huntley. Okay, Madam Clerk, you ready? Okay, we'll now resume our regular council meeting. We're now going to open a public meeting, so I need a resolution to open the public meeting. Mayor Graham, Councillor Belch, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Oh, Councillor Belch, you're muted. There we go.
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Motion is approved. We'll now go into report 7.8, report planning and economic development 2022-06, official plan amendment number 11, CIP expansion of public meeting township-wide CIP. Ms. Ellis and Ms. Ayat. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor McFadden, members of council, members of the public. This public meeting also deals with 2 matters. The first matter is an official plan amendment to the Township of Cavan Monaghan official plan. The second matter is the township-wide community improvement plan. I'm going to explain the details of the proposed official plan amendment, and Diana Kay from DM Wills will do a presentation regarding the township-wide CIP. DM Wills is the consultant that has been retained by the township to help the township prepare the township-wide CIP. Before we get into the details of those documents, I'd just like to confirm for council and members of the public that notice of the official plan amendment and the township-wide CIP was published in the Peterborough Examiner and Peterborough This Week on June 15th and June 16th, respectively. Notice was also provided to the required ministries and agencies by first-class prepaid mail and email, and notice was also provided on the township website. The County of Peterborough, Peterborough Public Health, and Enbridge Gas have all provided comments that they have no objection to the OPA or the CIP. Infrastructure Ontario did contact the township and ask a question about whether the jail lands were within the area subject to the OPA and the township-wide CIP. Township staff did confirm that yes, the jail lands are included in this document or these documents, and we've had no further follow-up from Infrastructure Ontario. We have not received any public comments or about or objections to the official plan amendment or the community improvement plan from members of the public. The Planning Act notice requirements for the OPA and the CIP have been satisfied. So like the last public meeting, the purpose of this public meeting is to provide information, answer questions, and collect feedback on the draft OPA and the CIP. As drafted, official plan amendment number 11 will add new objectives and criteria for a community improvement designation. Currently in the township's official plan, it speaks specifically to the Millbrook official plan. So with the proposed amendment, the existing sections, which are 810, 810.1, 810.2, and 810.3, will be deleted in their entirety and replaced with new wording with the same section numbers. With the new wording, there are several new objectives have been added. A couple of examples include the promotion of the renewal of older housing stock, together with improving the range and diversity of housing options, promoting the growth, improvement, and innovation of on-farm diversified uses, agricultural related uses, and agritourism opportunities, and establishing programs that identify and support economic land development and housing supply needs throughout the township. So those are new things being added with the official plan amendment. A couple of new criteria will also be added in those sections. The criteria include addressing an inadequate supply of mixed housing types for housing stock and inadequate supply of available land to accommodate commercial or industrial development or building expansion. With the proposed official plan amendment, the CIP area will also be expanded to include all lands within the Township of Cavan Monaghan. So with the plan, and the official plan amendment, we will be looking at establishing the community core area of Millbrook, the urban fringe area of Millbrook, and the rural area. They will all be included in the community improvement plan. There will be a map to go with official plan amendment number 11, and it's identified as Schedule 1. So the official plan amendment is very basic in terms of just adding to the existing section and allowing council to identify lands within the entire township of Cavan Monaghan as being available to the community improvement plan policies. With that, I will turn it over to Diana to give you the details on the proposed CIP.
Mayor McFadden, I'm just promoting Diana now.
Very good. Excellent. You fooled me there. I did not see a Diana waiting, but that would be because it's called DM Wheels 2. Welcome,
Yes.
Diana. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies for the name. It is me, Diana Kay, once again, Ad Council, addressing everyone here. I would like to just clarify first with Karen, would you like me just to go over the amendments to, or the proposed amendments to the CIP, or would you like me to give the full presentation, or are we waiting for that as the next item on the agenda?
I believe, through you, Mayor McFadden, that Diana, we would like you to go over your presentation at this point in time.
Okay, perfect. So if I'm not sure if Miss Page would be so kind as to put it up for me, or I believe, yes, it's that one right there. Perfect. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. So once again, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'd like to thank council and staff for having me here today. My name is Diana Kay. I am a senior planner with DM Wheels Associate Limited and the project manager for the Community Improvement Plan Expansion Project. I'm going to start calling it the CIPE because it's just a lot easier to say from this point forward. So we were in front of council this past February to provide an update on the project. And since then, a lot of work has been completed with township staff, the community, as well as the technical advisory committee that was put together, which has led to the preparation of the draft CIP that is before council and the public now. And so the purpose of this meeting is to garner feedback on the draft CIPE through this public meeting. Next slide, please. So an overview of just the agenda for today, so you know what I'll be speaking about. I'm just going to quickly go over the project process that we are in phase 3. So we're headed towards the end of the project process. I'll go over the proposed CIPE format as well as the new proposed CIP areas. I'm going to provide an overview of the application requirements, just the key application requirements that are new that you'll see to help applicants and staff implement the program itself or the plan itself. We'll look at the new CIP incentive programs. They have not changed from that, the ones that were presented in February, so you're not going to see anything new. And then we'll go through.
Yeah.
Sorry. We'll go through an overview of the implementation process, being the official plan amendment that Ms. Ellis was just speaking to, and the CIP bylaw amendment process. Then we'll get into the next step, so you know where we're headed after this. And of course, the very most important part of this meeting, the questions with respect to the CIPE. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we are now in phase 3, which is the community improvement plan. So the very last block of this slide, and it's bolded that we're in the statutory public meeting section. So we drafted the CIP. We're looking for public feedback at this point, and from there we will carry forward to prepare any updates so we can start looking for CIP adoption. Next slide, please. So with respect to the CIPE format, as part of our project scope, our team reviewed whether the existing Millbrook CIP, and I'll start calling it the MCIP for ease of reference, should be overhauled and updated, or if it made more sense to prepare a separate document. So as we were working through the process, our recommendation ended up being that we prepare a separate document that acts like an extension of the MCIP, which would be more practical to prepare, but it will be just as user-friendly for staff to implement or for the public to use. So instead of trying to create a much more robust updated document, you're sort of reading the MCIP first, and then you continue on into the CIPE format. So you continue on as an extension of one document to the next. And I can confirm that the way that we've prepared it, you're not going to see any duplications with respect to policy or efforts from one document to the next. So it's very important that these documents are read and implemented together. So the intent is that the reader starts with the MCIP, looking at the goals and objectives of the plan, including the general eligibility criteria, and then moving towards the CIPE, where there will be additional goals and objectives and general eligibility criteria, just because the CIP now offers 2 more CIP areas, and because there's more variety of businesses outside of the Millbrook downtown, we have a broader range of programs that are offered to meet the needs of those businesses. So it's important that you read both. In addition, we did hear a lot of feedback that the quality of the applications weren't meeting the expectations that were in the MCIP. So what we've done in the CIPE is actually provide a sample application. So it helps the applicant understand what the expectations are when they're submitting an application and what it will need in order for staff to deem it complete. So we're hoping that the sample application that will be appended to the CIPE will provide some assistance to applicants to understand what they actually need to include in their applications before submitting to the township. Next slide, please. And then we can skip over this. We're just going to look at the CIP areas. So this is the full bird's eye view. So the existing Millbrook CIP areas in green, and then outside of that in the hashed lines, that is the proposed urban fringe CIP area. And then the bounds of the township to the township borders is the proposed rural CIP area. Next slide. We're just zooming in here and you'll see that the proposed urban fringe CIP area matches the extent of the settlement boundaries of Millbrook itself. So that's just the extent of the existing and then the 2 new proposed CIP areas. Next slide. So from here, we're going to go over some of the key application requirements. So you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And so we thought in order to, instead of going through each individual criteria, especially because a lot of them have already been implemented, it's important to identify the key requirements that applicants should pay attention to when they're looking at the document and speaking to municipal staff about a CIP application. So the first item is mandatory pre-consultation with township staff. Township staff is a wonderful resource and they'll be able to help the applicant apply for the most appropriate program. They can also help identify which programs can be combined based on the eligibility criteria. So staff is there to help the applicants make the best choices on the programs that will support their project. All projects must adhere to the general eligibility criteria of both CIP documents, and that you have to demonstrate that you're contributing to achieving one or more of the community improvement goals and objectives. So they're clearly stated within the official plan, but they're also stated within the CIPs. So if applicants are looking for assistance from the municipality, you have to demonstrate to the municipality how you're going to improve the community with your project in order to receive those incentives. So uses that are eligible include commercial, this could be retail or office, industrial, institutional, agricultural, and residential. We've sort of put medical practitioners on the side here. We were asked to review opportunities for a CIP program that related to bringing in more medical practitioners to the area and retaining them in Kevin Monaghan. There aren't any CIP programs that are specific to that. So we've identified it in the programs as an opportunity and letting medical practitioners know that if they want to come to the area and they need some assistance to set up, or if they're already in the area and they need some assistance to expand their practice, that the CIP can be utilized for their practices as well. And all lands and buildings must be located in a designated CIP area in order to be eligible for the funding. And so I will get into that a little bit later under implementation because it is township wide, but council will dictate what programs and what areas are going to be implemented from one year to the next. So I'll explain that a little bit later. Next slide. So in order to apply, you must either be the registered owner of the property or you must give sign authorization to, say, a tenant if they're looking to apply for a CIP application on the property. You cannot start work without your application being approved. So if you start work and then apply, you cannot get the funds for the work that you've already conducted. It doesn't apply, it's not applied retroactively. So only complete applications will be reviewed by the township, and we're hoping the sample application that's attached to the CIP will help bring more quality applications forward to the township for review. Applicants must disclose if they have any other funding resources that are being put towards the project, because that will impact consideration of the funds being granted. And applicants, of course, can apply for more than one type of application, but you cannot apply for the same application in consecutive years. So if I apply for one type of application this year, I can't apply for the same application next year. That's not appropriate or eligible under this program. Next slide, please. So with respect to the grants, the maximum value of the total grants under the CIP will remain at 10,000, and that's per property and or project. But under the CIPE, we have increased the value of total grants approved to $15,000, and that is per project and or property, or the total value of the eligible cost, so whichever one is less. And the reason that we've done that is because there will be some opportunities in the rural areas, for example, to rehab or reuse a barn that might be a lot more expensive in terms of the type of project that you're funding. So we did increase the value to reflect the type of work that would be done outside of the downtown. Any of the work that is completed must be done within 12 months. And if you cannot complete a project within 12 months, you can apply for an extension, but you're going to have to provide justification to the township staff as to why you can't complete that project. You know, whether it's a pandemic that happens, or, you know, you can't get your materials in on time, you know, you have to find a new contractor for some reason that you're not meeting your deadlines, and you can't, and you need that extension, you'll have to justify that to township staff. Any of the work that is proposed on site, you still have to meet the official plan and zoning bylaw. So the use has to be permitted. You have to meet the zoning provisions of the zoning bylaw. If you're a heritage property, we have to make sure that you're following the legislation under the Ontario Heritage Act, for example, that you are in fact a designated building, and all applications have to meet Ontario Building Code. So when you submit plans to the municipality, you have to make sure that you're meeting the legislation under the building code. Next slide. Thank you. So these are a list of the 8 new incentive programs. They haven't changed from what we showed you back in February. You will notice that 7 out of the 8 programs are applicable in all of the sectors, save and except the Rural and Economic Development Grant that is specific to the rural area. And that is just to incentivize economic opportunities out in the rural areas, for example, on farm diversified uses or agricultural related uses, and help property owners start those programs. Next slide. So this speaks to the CIP implementation. So as you heard Ms. Ellis provide before, there are amendments that were required to the official plan. One, to include the additional CIP areas that we're proposing, and to update the language that also considers the goals and objectives and the policies that are more reflective of the new programs that are available to the variety of businesses that will now have an opportunity to apply for a CIP program. The CIP bylaw amendment is required in order to expand the CIP to allow it to be township-wide. It will also implement the additional CIP areas. And so when we're showing the 3 CIP areas, we're really looking at opportunities that are still within the downtown, that are within the urban fringe area, so being the settlement boundaries of Millbrook, and then the rural areas. Now, there's different programs that could be applied, and there's different opportunities, and so it's really up to council from one year to the next, which program is going to be implemented, how much grant is going to be available in any given year, and whether or not all or some of the CIP areas will actually be eligible from one year to the next. So council has a lot of control over here to determine from one year to the next which CIP area will be in effect, what programs will be in effect, and what maximum grant funding is available in that particular year. And I just want to clarify that the MCIP bylaw language has not changed. We kept that the same because it's working well and it's implemented, and we would just keep going. So there was no need to repeal and update that language at all. Next slide, please. So I already went over all of this with respect to council's role, and that we are not making any additional changes to the CIP. Next slide. So now we'll just be going into the next step. So you can go into the next slide, which is after the public meeting. So we're having the statutory public meeting right now, so we can garner feedback from those who have been able to review the plan itself. So from here, we're going to update the CIPE based on the comments that we received today. And then from there, we have to prepare the final draft. And now that has to be reviewed and approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So once we make that update, the ministry has indicated that we have to give them at least 4 weeks for them to review and comment. So in Ms. Ellis and Ms. Aya's recommendation in their previous report, it does give us a month to be able to give the ministry some time to review and comment. If there are any comments that we feel may or may not be necessary, we will have those discussions with the ministry, but we will update the final draft accordingly. And then once that final draft is prepared, we will come back to council for final presentation of what the final document will entail, and we will be looking for adoption at that time. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so this is just information, where to get information on the CIPE project. So the information is all available on the municipality's website, and as well, please feel free to contact Ms. Ayad or myself if you have any questions or comments or require clarification on where we're going with the CIPE. And that's it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any questions, comments from members of council before we move on? Deputy Mayor Graham, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Diana, her team, and Bridget and Karen for all their work on this, and my colleague Councillor Huntley as well. It's been a process, and I've been an obstacle, but also very appeased by the amount of work and effort that's gone into this, and I'm very happy with the outcome. And so I really appreciate the inclusion and the understanding and the not being afraid of extra work to ensure that it's a viable and successful program, which it no doubt will be. So kudos to everyone at your team and everyone on our staff as well, for all the work that's gone into it, because it has not been an easy project.
Very good. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Graham. Very well said. Any other questions, comments from members of council before I open it up to the public? None, then I will refer to the public. We do have some attendees. If anybody wishes to speak to this official plan amendment, please raise your hand. Okay, none. I did see Ms. Ayaad come on. Did you wish to speak further? No, okay. Just turn on the camera. We're ready to go if need be. Okay, good. Again, anybody in attendance wish to speak specifically to this item? Okay, seeing none, then I will, for consideration of the report, members of council, motion to receive the report, accept the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Graham, second. Councillor Huntley, Madam Clerk, recorded vote. 1 second.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. I need a resolution then to close the public meeting. Councillor Huntley and Councillor Shaw. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Rick, you move, I apologize. Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Okay, thank you very much. And just so members of council are aware, I have asked the clerk to be closing off the mics today. We were getting some wicked feedback at one point. So anyways, trying to keep the mics closed so that we get that feedback. So anyways, thank you, Madam Clerk, for doing that. Our next item is presentation 8.1, Joanna Park and Veronica Mason, Baker Tilly, Comparative Analysis 2021 Financial Statements and Audit Presentation. Madam Clerk, over to you to let them in.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, Ms. Parks is with us, but I don't see Veronica. So I'm wondering if it's Mr. Hickey. We'll just wait for Joanna's update.
Very good. Welcome, Joanna. Your mic is open. Do you have a partner joining you?
Yes, I do. John Hickey is here, our manager. Okay. Veronica is enjoying some much deserved vacation.
Fantastic. Good to hear. Okay, so Joanna, we will, one moment, let John Hickey in. And now the floor is both of yours. Who wishes to speak?
I think that will be me anyway, but
Okay.
I'm here for the hard questions. So
Well put. Okay, thank you, Joanna. Go ahead.
thank you very much, Mayor McFadden and members of council for having us here today. We are just going over your financial results for the year 2021. You've got a number of documents in your package, and this is the presentation that pretty much summarizes it all. It goes through the financial statements as well as the letter that's included there, but of course, happy to address any questions on the other documents as well. And if you want to flip ahead, I don't know who's controlling. Thank you. So we start with the auditor's report. That's what you're hiring us for, and it's that this is the key paragraph in our auditor's report. You'll find on the second paragraph on the first page of the auditor's report. And it says, in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the township at December 31st, 2021. That is a clean auditor's opinion. That is what you would expect to see. The one thing to note, it is consolidated financial statements. So not only are they the results of the township operations, but as well as the BIA and the library as well. Moving along to the next slide, we are required to let members of council know what we do as part of our audit. We review minutes of council to ensure that anything that relates to anything financial that should be in the financial statements, we ensure that it is reflected in the financial statements. We do various amounts of testing, whether it be statistical sampling, analytical review. We look at management's estimates to make sure they are reasonable. We also look at all your different systems. We look at the documentation, the related controls around the revenues, disbursements, money in and money out, payroll, as well as journal entries. And then on the next slide, the audit is complete pending council's approval of the financial statements, receipt of the signed representation letter when we're all done. And we aren't completely done until the legal letters are returned. So we ask your legal counsel for confirmation on any outstanding claims and whether then therefore they need to be reflected in the financial statement. So once they're all returned, then we can wrap up the final bits of the audit. We had no significant difficulties encountered during the course of our audit, no changes in our initial audit plan. In fact, we are able to be on site, which was lovely for everybody involved. It's hard on everybody, your staff and our team, to do an audit virtually. So it's nice to be able to be on site. No disagreements or difficulties with management, excellent cooperation as we've come to expect from your team. And we just note here just that there is still the uncertainty note in your financial statements related to COVID-19, and that's because we still don't fully know the implications of the impacts of COVID on the financial status of your municipality. So there is that note within your financial statements. Ideally, that will be gone by next year. And we didn't have any uncorrected audit differences. Then we get into the numbers of the financial statements. We do show a 5-year comparison. Really, we're focusing on the last two, this year and last year, but it is nice to see the trends over the years. So these are your financial assets. So totaling $24.5 million, the largest one being your cash, a nice increase year over year, partially due to operating surplus that you did achieve during the year. We do have investments of $1.3 million, and those are all invested in the one fund. Accounts receivable, that's amounts owing at the end of the year, and a lot of that just has to do with timing of grants on when you received it, $1.5 million. And then taxes receivable, just over $2 million this year. But because of the change in your tax rates, the percentage, when we look at the total of your taxes outstanding at the end of the year related to your total amount levied during the year, it's actually gone down a little bit. So in 2020, your percentage was 10.85%, and in 2021, it's 10.77%. So it's gone down just a little bit. It's slightly above the ministry's recommendation of 10%, but you're bordering right on there. And then the following slide is just the graphical representation of these numbers, showing just the trends. As you can see, the cash, is going to vary depending on what's going on in the year. 2019, of course, was the community center, so expected it saw a large decrease there, and then coming back up over the years. The following slide shows the financial liabilities at December 31st. Your accounts payable, $1.8 million. That's the amounts owing relating to 2021 that hadn't been paid at the end of the year, as well as deposits, developer deposits, and that's included in there as well. And that's a lot of times it will vary year over year, just depending on timing. Your deferred revenue obligatory reserve funds, that's a combination of three things, sorry. Your development charges are about $2.5 million of that 3.2 million. You have parkland fees of 185,000, and then gas tax funds that you haven't spent yet of 437,000. So that almost $3.2 million is funds that you've received that you haven't spent yet that are going to be used for future projects. Your employee future benefits, that's just your health and dental benefits that will be payable in the future for employees that you have now, and that's an estimate based on an actuarial assessment. Your long-term debt is just decreased this year because of principal repayments, no new debt this year in 2021. And then your landfill post-closure liability, that's the amount for monitoring for your site that closed in '98. And then the following slide just shows the graphical representation. Again, you can see your long-term debt is the largest financial liability you have, and it's decreasing over the years. And then your non-financial assets are your assets that you're going to hold on to for longer than a year and that can easily be converted to cash. The largest one being your tangible capital assets of $71.2 million. And that increased slightly over the years. And that's just because your purchases of capital assets were greater than the amortization, because of course this is the net book value, so the historical cost of your capital assets less the amortization or the expensing of those assets over its useful life, and that comes out to $71.2 million. And we'll see a breakdown of the additions later on in the slides. The following slide is a lot of numbers. I try not to put too many numbers on a slide, but this is the biggest one. And what this does is it shows on your consolidated statement of operations, this is a snapshot. We're going to see more detail further on. But what it does show is that third line down, the PSAB annual surplus. And what it's doing there is on your statement of operations, it will show a budgeted surplus of $1.9 million. And in 2021, the actual surplus of almost $3.5 million. And we know, of course, council didn't budget for a $1.9 million surplus. And what this does is it reconciles down to your actual operating surplus, whether it be budgeted and actual. So in the 2021 column, in fact, you didn't budget for the 1.9, you budgeted for a 0 operating surplus as expected. And it's showing the reconciliation there, whether it be transfers to and from reserves, the purchase of capital assets, which you budgeted for, which doesn't show in PSAB on your financial statements, yet amortization does. So it's showing that reconciliation. And yet then on the bottom in the actual column, the 224,000, that is your true operating surplus, which we will see further on in the slide. So it's really just showing the differences between how you budget and how PSAB requires us to show the financial statements. The following slide just shows the difference between your accumulated surplus of $82.8 million and how much of that is invested in capital assets and therefore already been used. And you can see in all cases over the last 5 years, you've had more in your accumulated surplus than just your capital assets. So that is that's showing, it's basically your reserves, and we'll see the numbers in a second. And the following slide just shows the difference between your revenues and your expenses and your annual surplus. And you've been able to acquire over the years capital grants, and usually then you recognize the capital grant in the year you receive it, but then the offsetting expenses is done over the useful life of those assets. So that's why you see that gap between the revenues and expenses each year. We get into the revenues. So you had budgeted $15.5 million and your actual $15.7 million, pretty close to budget there. Your property taxation being the largest of your revenues at $10.2 million. You have user charges, you can see very comparable to the year before. A little over budget. There was some areas, water and sewer and building permits that were in excess of budget there. Other significant items on there, your province of Ontario, there was some funding that was budgeted for that wasn't received for one reason or another there. So you'll see the decrease there. Most of the province funding is your OMPF and your OSIP funding, as well as some Safe Restart funding as well. You will notice an increase in your OLG revenue from 86,000 in 2020 to 247,000. And then the last two lines there, your developer contributions earned and federal gas tax earned. Those are the amounts that were spent during the year. The amounts I showed you on the statement of financial position is how much you still have left that you could spend, but that was the amount that was spent on various projects during the year. And then the following slide is the pie chart to show you where you're getting your funds from. 65.2% from property taxation and 16.2% from user charges. So a lot of your total revenue coming from the ratepayers. And then we get into your expenses. PSAB requires us to show your expenses in two ways. This is the first way, by department, if you will. There was lots of areas that were under budget during the year. As you can see, the total expenses being 13.5 million, actual being 12.2 million. Some of the differences relate to projects that were not initially budgeted in capital, but then ended up being in capital. So they're in the budget, but not in actual. But and then other items just not being done or not having to be spent as planned. And then we see the pie chart there, 24.4% being in transportation, 20.7% in environmental, and the 21.8%. And then again, same numbers, same totals that we saw in the previous, the 13.5 versus the 12.2, but this is more in the type of expense, so salary and benefits, the interest charges, materials and contracted services. That's where we see the big differences there. And then as well as in external transfers as well. And then again, the pie chart, 33% of salaries and benefits and 24.3% in contracted services. We've seen the $82.8 million as your accumulated surplus, and this shows the breakdown of that. 62.1 million is invested in capital assets, of which there is a little bit of unfinanced capital for the community center included in that as well. So that's the historical cost minus the accumulated amortization minus any unfinanced capital and debt associated. That's the amount that is shown there as invested in capital assets. The unfunded employee future benefits and post-closure liability landfill are shown as negative because you'll fund those as you have to pay out the funds. And then the libraries has a deficit as well in the year, and a small deficit in-year deficit of $900 in the Millbrook BIA to take it from $39,842 to $38,942 during the year. And then there is where you will see the township operating surplus of $224,000. And then the bottom section shows you the nice increase you do have in your reserves and reserve funds of 18.3 million to 21.2 million in your reserves and reserve funds to give you the accumulated surplus of $82.9 million. And then the following slide just shows the change over the years in your reserve and reserve funds. The future capital, of course, being used in 2019 for the community center, a portion of it, and then seeing the growth of it year over year since then. The tangible capital asset additions, we saw the increase in your tangible capital assets, and this is the additions and how they are broken out. I thought it was nice. You know, sometimes it'll be all in one area. This year, you've kind of spread it out in what your additions are. So you do have building and building improvements, of which over half of that was the improvements at the municipal building there. You do have equipment additions, and that's everything from some furniture, bunker gear, playground, and some new software. You had your vehicles, the biggest one being the excavator, but then some new trucks this year too. Multiple additions in your roads areas, as well as sewer systems, and then still some assets under construction in the environment area. And then your land and land improvements, that was some playground paving. The next slide is a good one just to look at every once in a while, just to look at how your capital asset additions and the relationship between those and the amortization. The idea being, on average, your additions should be greater than your amortization because you're amortizing your assets over their historical cost. And of course, you have to replace them at today's dollars, which of course, are significantly more than what you purchase those at. So you just want to make sure to avoid that infrastructure deficit that used to be the buzzword a couple of years ago, that you are replacing them at a greater rate. So obviously in 2019, you had the community center, and that was a significant amount. But now that is, you're on to other projects, that should be something that you just look at as a snapshot. But of course, this is where, the asset management plan really comes in, is what you should be replacing when looking at the plans. And then looking at the average useful life and looking at how much is remaining. And this is kind of a snapshot by category. The sewer systems and the water systems, you still have 84 and 77% useful life. Roads and bridges are a little less there. And then the vehicles and equipment are about half-life there, and the buildings and building improvements nicely. And then the net financial assets. So this is the your financial assets minus your financial liabilities, and looking at the trend there. So nice increase from year over year from 2020 to 2021. And that is our presentation. Any questions?
Very good. Thank you very much, Joanna. Questions from members of council? Councillor Huntley?
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, Joanna, out of curiosity, when I was looking at your oh, my slide just changed. I don't know where it was. The tangible assets. I was just curious of where the Sireline property shows up, and if it shows up in that slide at all.
Where the what? Sorry?
The township has purchased a property that we've gone through the process of rezoning and getting ready to tender. I was just curious, does it show up in any of the charts, like especially under tangible capital assets? You showed land and land improvements of 100,000, where I assume that property is worth more than that. So I was just kind of questioning where would that property show up?
Let me just see.
Sorry, my screen scrolled on me and I lost which chart that was.
It was probably the pie chart with the additions, I am assuming.
It was the pie chart, yes. It had, that's the one right there. So yeah, so tangible capital assets, additions, you have land and land improvements for 100K. Would it have shown up when we originally purchased it, or does it?
Yeah, it would show up when you originally purchased it. Did you purchase it in 2021 or?
2019.
Okay, so it would have showed up as an addition in 2019, and then right now it's sitting as part of your tangible capital assets on the statement of financial position. So your total in your capital assets that you have right now are $71.2 million. So it would be included in that $71.2 million.
Okay, that's what it says. Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
And would it be contained in there as the purchase price as far as the value?
Yeah, yes. That's the PSEB way, and I can argue both sides of that, is that it's historical cost. So especially when it's land, right? It's changed so much over the years, but by the same token, I'm sure council has better things to spend their money on than getting valuations done every year too, right? So that's the other side. If you wanted fair value, it would require valuations done regularly. So
absolutely. Any other questions from members of council on the audit? I did have one question on slide 5. I believe it's 97. I'm not sure which one you're going to go, but it's slide 5 of the presentation. There is the taxes receivable for 2021, which is about 2 million. Now, recognizing that it's the township lower tier that collects the taxes for the county and the school board, the 2 million taxes receivable, is that specific to the lower tier, or is that combined?
That's a great question. That is combined. So you collect on behalf of the county and the schools, and you have to pay them over the year, but then you're on the hook for waiting until you get all the payments. And that's why, though, the lower tier does get the penalty and interest on that as well.
Okay, so in that earlier statement whereby it's 10%, is that relative to lower tiers, or is that the same percentage that would be applied to an to a single tier that actually collects and keeps all the money?
It would be relative, yeah, it would be similar. It's still based on the 10% because we look at the total amount levied. So that would be levied for the county and the schools as well.
Okay, very good. Yeah, because that 10% is actually significantly higher for our lower tier because we've already paid out amounts that we haven't collected. So it's actually significantly higher. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
very good. Okay, any other questions, members of council? Seeing none. Okay, then motion then to receive the report and accept the recommendation.
As well, Mayor McFadden, to authorize yourself and the Director of Finance to sign the management report for the year ending December 31st, 2021.
Absolutely. But sorry, is that not in the recommendation?
I don't know if there's actually a slide, to be truthful, within this.
Okay. All right, do what the clerk says because that keeps us out of trouble. And that's exactly what Deputy Mayor Graham was going to move and seconded by Councillor Huntley with a question.
With a question, are we considering the report? If I look at the agenda, isn't there questions and comments from the public? Did we miss a public meeting in here somewhere, or am I getting my public meetings completely confused?
I think you've got a public meetings messed up. Hold on, I gotta flip back to the beginning. This is just the
Through you, Mayor McFadden, I can help clarify. This is,
Nope,
there is
I'm
no
good.
public. Okay.
Yep. My bad.
So,
My bad.
No problem. It was the two public meetings, I think, that just kind of created that. No, there is no public comment on this.
All right.
There's no bads, Councillor Huntley. Thank you for keeping the rest of us on our toes.
Losing track here.
Okay, we got
I'll second the presentation to receive.
We got a mover and a seconder and any unrelated questions. None. Perfect. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Joanna and John, thank you very much once again. Okay, Madam Clerk, on to the next item, delegations. 9.1 Dean Del Mastro, 11600034 Ontario Limited Surplus Land Inquiry. If you could let Dean in and let John and Joanna out.
So all of that is happening. Oh, and Mr. Del Mastro has joined us.
Very good. Welcome, Mr. Del Mastro. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, members of council, staff. Thank you for hearing me today. I'm just, as some of you may be aware, last year we purchased, when I say we, myself and my family purchased the property at 374 Carolyn Street, formerly known as Willow Bend Marina. Adjacent to the property, and the reason for my delegation today is to talk to you about a piece of land that runs adjacent to the property. It is a closed road allowance, and I have a historical, I'm just looking at a historical map here that just refers to it as road allowance between concessions 9 and 10. It's I believe it's a 66-foot piece of land that runs the entire length of the property. The value of the property, in my view, is modest at best because it can't be developed into anything. It has the entire area outside of where the marina is located is a floodplain, and it has building restrictions placed upon it. The value that it has for us as an operator is twofold. One, it fronts on Johnson Drive, which is the main drive. We actually don't front there, and I would like to place signage there for the business to increase not just visibility, but also so that it's easier for people to find the property. And the other piece of interest for us is that it would provide us the additional shoreline where I will be seeking permits to add additional dock spaces along the water's edge. So those are the two key pieces of interest and value in it for us. Aside from the fact that it would actually overall expand the property, even if you can't develop it. So I did go to staff on it some time ago. I think staff is limited, obviously, in what they can do other than make a recommendation or not. on a piece of, on a parcel of land. What's very clear is that this parcel of land will never be a road. It'll never be used as a road. And I believe it's just an orphaned piece of land that was set aside, obviously a long time ago, and will never be used for, I think, what its intent was initially. So that's what I've got. I'm happy to respond to any questions that anyone may have.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Del Mastro. Questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor Grimm.
Question maybe for staff and through you, Mayor. Just a question. I know that this is one of the few, given all its restrictions and whatnot, but it is one of the few areas that we have that actually touches the Otonabee in the township. I just didn't know if staff could maybe speak to, is there an opportunity at least for the signage component to, which sounds like it's half or a portion at least of the interest. Is there precedent or any sort of historical covenants that we've entered into individuals to potentially, not require the sale of this land? Because like I said, I think there is a key significance to the uniqueness and in it touching the autonomy and the servicing requirements that we need over in Fraserville eventually. So I just didn't know if there was the opportunity or if there is precedent from staff to enter into such an agreement for that purpose.
Go ahead, Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council and to Mr. Del Mastro. First of all, we did receive an inquiry on this property. I think in my initial response, I was looking for sort of what was the intent, what was the intent of the use of the land. We have noted that the land is environmental. It is a wetland. And it's our understanding there's restrictions on the land in regard to where you might ultimately have docking facilities, things of that nature. So generally, the process would be that we would entertain the request from, in this case, the deputant delegation, and we would actually report back to council on that matter. In regard to the signage, it's the first time that I've heard about the signage request, so I think we'd have to look at it under the sign bylaw. We'd have to consider where a location might be suitable for a sign. Will it work at the edge of the road allowance up at Johnson at the intersection of Carolyn? And but I think generally the property is not to be touched. It's actually at that state. We always look at these properties for what's future opportunities, what might happen. But I think I would prefer that senior staff have a look at this and we bring back a report to council on the request of the delegation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hancock. Deputy Mayor Graham, was there a follow-up? Sorry.
No, I think that's
okay. And just to be clear, Mr. Hancock, the request from the delegation was with regards to the docking as well as the signage. Is that what you were going to bring back the report on? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Del Mastro, was there any further things to inquire or look at as part of that report if they're bringing something back?
No, I don't believe so. The only thing I would that I would suggest is that with respect, and I do recognize what the gentleman indicated just a moment ago. The only, with respect to docking, docking doesn't typically disturb or in any way impact on the shoreline. These would be floating, non-stationary. So I guess they would be anchored in place, but they would not be, but they would not otherwise disturb the shoreline. So they wouldn't impact or have any, they wouldn't be touching the shoreline any more than a boat would be that would be operating in the river. So I wouldn't be looking to build any structures or anything like that in the area. So I don't think we'd have any issues, nor would they be in place. For example, in high season when there's a lot of current and so forth out in the water, we'd seek to bring those into the shelter of the harbor so that they wouldn't be harmed or otherwise wind up down the river. So I think we should be okay in that regard and in that aspect of it. I'm not aware of any environmental impact with respect to floating docks. With respect to the signage, yeah, I'd very much like to hear if there's an alternative proposal on how we can accommodate that. If you're looking at the picture, I think what you'll see is where our property line ends. And what it doesn't show you from an aerial view is if you're standing on the ground there, there is a fairly significant treed area there that really kind of obstructs, especially if you're coming, say, from the city of Peterborough. It really obstructs not just that our entire drive is obstructed, but really you don't even see Carolyn Street until you're pretty much at it. And that's because of the tree line that you can see in the aerial view. It's quite dense in there and unmaintained. So it's being able to put something out that would allow people driving along Johnson Drive just to see that they're arriving at it, for example, would be of a benefit to us.
Very good. Very reasonable
Okay.
request. Mr. Hancock, you're clear on what the report.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Mayor, if we have any questions in regard to details, I think we can reach out. So I think we'll,
absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. No problem.
Okay,
All right, very
thank you.
good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Graham, go ahead.
Just want a motion to refer to staff for further conversation?
Yep, that works. Second. Councillor Huntley, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Del Mastro.
Thank you, everyone.
Our next item, delegations 9.2, Richard Weldon, request for support. Madam Clerk, I'll turn it over to you.
I believe Mr. Weldon is on his virtual journey over. Give us 1 second here. And Mr. Weldon has joined us, Mayor McFadden.
Very good. Welcome, Mr. Weldon. You're currently muted and your video is off, just in case you're trying to get it all lined up.
Again, video's bottom left.
Very good. We can hear you and now we can see you. Very good. Go ahead.
I apologize. Sorry, let me try this again. As you said, people with their lips moving, it's not so good when when your microphone's off. So I'll try that again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak and meet with you regarding an update on Kawartha Downs. Am I supposed to give my address and so forth as well?
No, you're good, Mr. Weldon. That was for the public meeting.
Okay, just want to make sure, following the rules here. So today I wanted to be clear, we're not asking for any resolution from council. We did put in our request in there about a resolution. I thought it was a little premature. So I thought in the alternative, I thought we would just give you an information update. So purpose is really just to inform and bring council up to date on our plans, reports, and what's going on with the development. Now, I did send in a plan, Mr. Mayor and council. I'm not sure how I can get it up on the screen, but it's not absolutely necessary. If somebody can share it, I think I sent it to you, Mayor.
I would need, because anything introduced into a delegation, I need a motion of council to bring it forward. Okay, all right. Because council hasn't had a chance to review it, so it's probably better that way. Go ahead.
I just wanted to actually bring the site plan. We had some trouble just getting it onto the agenda here. So in any case, please feel free the council to have a look at it at a later time. It just shows where the various events are. It shows how the site is laid out, where the hotel is, where the tractor pull is, where the concert is, and various other items. We can come back to that at another point in time, Mr. Mayor and council.
Okay.
So I just wanted to reiterate, this sounds familiar, but I mean, again, Romspen, we didn't purchase this facility. We took it over. It was a failed business. The car racing was losing money. The horse racing was behind and reduced and losing money. The casino was about to be closed. few, if any, events, and the buildings were slowly decaying here. But with the help of yourself, Mayor, and members of council, we did keep it alive. Everyone knows this. And we have horse racing and casino. And now we have, again, with some help, we have quite a successful event center that's also just started. Last night was a great event with Rec Laws. I think it turned out really, really well. People seem to be very, very happy. We were given approval with your help, Mr. Mayor and council, the approval of a residential subdivision, so that the debt load on this property could be retired and the employment and entertainment side could move forward. And since your approval of the plan, we tried to move this massive project forward. It's not been easy, and there's been a number of challenges. And we're going to admit we might have made a few mistakes, which we hope to rectify. I assure you, we've tried to do everything that we thought that council wanted us to do. I did want to say that one of the things about what we're planning on doing is we will be, in a later date, we'll be outlining our request to council for a grant to facilitate some of this massive infrastructure that we're doing. It's an agricultural, tourism, and employment development, but that's premature yet. We'll be coming forward to discuss how that may impact the local township and with Cavan, Monaghan, and so forth. I am now going to introduce you over to Tom, and he's going to take over. Just a little discussion on where we are in this. Tom?
Okay, so before Tom, just so I can follow the regularities, can I get a motion to council for Tom Jakovic to speak? We got Deputy Mayor Graham, mover, seconder, Councillor Huntley, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Very good. Motion approved. Go ahead, Tom.
So since the passing of the MZO, we started with a $1.5 million renovation to the interior of the site. While most of these renovations were cosmetic, many of the critical items like HVAC and electrical were done. We consulted with a number of community groups, including 2 Lions Club groups, several sports organizations, community care, the agricultural community. We have a group of approximately 40 beef, dairy, and crop farmers, the Millbrook BIA, the airport, the horse racing community, and we've had some discussions with 3 of our First Nation partners. We invested in this community to date $25,000 as a commitment to the Millbrook BIA for each year for the next 3 years, a $10,000 investment in one of the Lions clubs to develop a classic car event, which went well, $34,000 in board ads, sponsorships in your local arenas and sports facilities, and a $25,000 commitment to the new Humane Society facility as an ongoing partner with the Humane Society. In addition, we completed a well-received collective agreement with our employees, many of which are residents in Cavan, Monaghan, that resulted in a 6% to 30% salary increase, so that no one at Kawartha Downs, even part-time occasionals, are getting paid minimum wage. All of this was done during one of the worst years of the pandemic that basically left us with no income, but still paying taxes and utilities. Moving ahead as quickly as we could, we managed to have 2 events. Our opening day event on May 28th, which we thought was a tremendous success. And of course, our first country festival yesterday, which again, we felt was a great starting event. The third event that we have coming is on August the 5th, and that event will christen our new tractor pull, which according to local pullers, people that reside in Cavan, Monaghan, is the best facility in Canada. So our last event for this year is a Rib Fest in the first week of September. I just would point out that we continue to hire locally first, that we've urged a number of social service groups to do 50-50 draws and to raise money at our own events. I think the Lions Club was around $1,500 last night when we finished. That was within 3 hours. And we continue to offer local businesses, whether home businesses or in Millbrook, free space in one of the 10 tents that we purchased and which we erect at every one of our events so that local businesses can be showcased. That in a nutshell is what we've been doing since your council approved our MZO. Richard.
Sorry, I'm dashing here to make sure that my battery doesn't go here. So maybe just keep going for a sec, Tom. Let me just put this in.
I think what members of council might be interested in knowing is that this facility, as I pointed out in terms of renovating, has really, for all intents and purposes, been on a slide for the last 10 years, more so in the last 4. And so a lot of what we've been doing is to try to bring it back up to a point where it's usable again. So that included the interior renovations or restoration, that included some work to our barns, that included our overflow parking area. It also meant us advertising for the first time, which we haven't done. Our events have been pretty well managed. We've had a few bumps in the road, whether it was traffic or whether it was parking or something else. But I think generally speaking, we've managed to have a very good relationship with our neighbors. I have personally knocked on every door twice. And I'm proud to say that the vast majority attended last night's event. And of the few that I saw, they were quite happy. So I think, again, Richard, I'll turn it over to you, but that's what we've been working on in the last few months.
Sure. Just in terms of paperwork on the application for the DSP for the residential community, we have all our reports are online currently. Anyone can go to our website and see every single detailed report that we have. The actual submission is being held back until the entertainment site plan is ready, which is pretty well 99% ready currently. Most of the reports, almost all of them are ready, as I said, online. We are still awaiting the last part of the archaeological report as it relates to the environmentally sensitive lands, which we, again, did not want to be disturbed. There are certain time requirements for the archaeological reports, and I think those are just time related, but they're getting completely finalized. The requirement for a marketing study, which I understand may not require in the future, but ours is still going to be done. I think that's what held it up in terms of applying. We were hoping to apply a few weeks ago, but we'll have that marketing study, which will be finalized. A final draft of our servicing plan for both sites. That servicing plan has been circulated with your staff a few times and is being revised as we go. We're working closely with staff and plan to hope to keep working closely over the next little while to get all the next details in. There's no surprise that we are following the master plan that you endorsed some time ago. The only minor changes are those asked by your local community. We spend a lot of time trying to meet with the community groups to ask what they're looking for in the development in terms of needs and wants and so on. We've tried to be very responsive and also our neighbors. We try to invite, we actually do invite all our neighbors to each event just to make sure we get community support, and they come in and they talk to us and tell us how they like it and quite enjoy the concerts. They're very pleased. Probably the most important is they're very pleased the car racing has stopped because they found that exceedingly noisy. Again, a few little bumps we just talk about. We're revising our grading plan for overflow parking. We've had some parking in, we were challenged with parking because of the large number of people come in. And we have, we're working with what staff have looked at and giving what the neighbors want. We've been requested to do a berm on the southern portion of our property to protect the neighbors from any sound. And we have some material that's going to be moved over there once we have approval to move it and once it works with staff and with the community. A final permanent fireworks plan is being submitted to satisfy the authorities and our fire chief. Traffic changes to better address and management during events, that's work in progress. We're working with the local police and with the various security staff to make sure that there's proper traffic, no traffic impairments or disruptions, whatever along coming off the main highway. So I think that's been improved a lot. I did want to mention that the charity bingo is currently in the 30-day review period. I believe the clerk circulated, I believe, it to normal people in the area, but I think it's in the 30-day comment period. Again, just to reiterate, that is a charity bingo, and we are looking to do the 50-50 draws, and it'll benefit the groups that we're talking about, the charitable groups that are really become dependent on a lot of the donations that we're raising. We're hoping the bingo can be a big success to help the nonprofit groups in the community. And I think that's, I think one of the things that we hope that the meeting from this discussion, the council will come away with 3 things that we would really and sincerely invite you to visit our site. If you haven't been coming to the concerts, obviously we'd love you to come and attend it, but even without the concerts, we'd invite you to visit the site firsthand and just understand what we're doing. We're always available to meet, including many of our community partners coming to the site. Many of our neighbors have come all the time as we invite them. It's an open house basically at any time. We request you ask your staff to meet with us. They've been very helpful so far, and I think we've improved our communication with them, and we continue to want to work with them. And the staff hopefully can update you on progress as we're making forward and as we're moving down the line to try and get this thing through to a full, complete application. And we just ask that we continue to receive for you to support our master plan for this revitalization of the Downs. And I think those are the main things we just wanted to inform you really of where we are. There were some discussions about First Nations that we have been either not doing enough consultation or whatever. I just wanted to state for the record that we have been available to meet with the various First Nations. We've had 2 meetings with First Nations. We've had numerous meetings canceled. We're going to be putting online everything that has happened on First Nations consultation. We've been ready and willing to meet with them, actually, with the 2 First Nations groups around us, Kawartha Downs. And even we urged them to actually meet prior to the MZO passing. And it was never in the cards for them, for their schedules, to meet with us. But we have remained open and available to meet with them. And there are numerous other groups that are in the area that we have, we've hired our own First Nations lawyer that has reached out to all First Nations groups and offered our time to meet with them at their convenience when they're available. So I guess on that, I just wanted to leave that with you, Council, Mayor and Council, and see if there are any questions. But we're quite pleased with progress, and we're seeing this concert facility and other things get off the ground, which is exciting. So.
Very good. Thank you both, Richard and Tom. You are creating quite the destination over there, and I do give you congratulations on all your efforts thus far. It's been very quick. We've seen a couple very exciting and satisfactory events that have already taken place with promise for more, to fantastic timing with your 50th year anniversary. With regards to your questions, I think all members of council have been over there at some point as of late with regards to viewing your site, and thank you for keeping the invitation open for those that wish to come over and take further review. I know we've got the Township Opportunity Derby Night coming up on the 23rd of July is the next event. With regards to staff, I do believe staff have been very open to meet at any time. You've got all the contact information respectfully for each of the various departments, and they're certainly available to continue the conversations and assist you as you go along. Open lines of communications, as we all know, is always key to being successful. And your final point with regards to support, I think this council has been very supportive in the application that you brought forward with regards to the MZO to kickstart this off. And we're certainly looking forward to further detailed plans and discussions on pathways forward, and looking forward to the opportunity to have those before council in complete format in order to review and consider. So I think that about covers off what your 3 requests are, but I will certainly turn it over to members of council and or any staff that may at this point have some questions relative to your discussion. Any questions from members of council? None? Any questions from members of staff? Just for clarity, with regards to where we're at moving forward? Everybody's very bashful today. I didn't quite articulate everybody's feelings all in.
I think, Mr. Mayor, we wanted to make sure that there weren't any miscommunications on our part. I know that some people have asked us about our consultation with First Nations. We have had a meeting, or at least a conversation with the chief of Alderville. We had a very good open conversation with the chief and some other members of Hiawatha. It's unfortunate that we had a meeting set up with Curve Lake that was canceled. Now there's been a change in who the chief is, and we've not been able, even through our First Nations lawyer, to get a new meeting scheduled. But we do have a meeting scheduled with Scugog, who, as you know, have a casino and have stated publicly that they don't want any casinos competing with theirs. But that meeting's coming up. We're looking forward to a reasonable meeting. And we have a docket full of emails and telephone calls that we have made to reach out and work with our First Nations. So we will continue to do so. I think the second one was that we had some conversations about us reusing the overflow parking areas, which we stripped off some of our topsoil and put wood chip or crushed stone in order that the cars didn't sink like they did in the past. I think your staff have been excellent at giving us what the guidelines are and asking for some additional drawings for grading. And we are endeavoring to get those in very quickly in order to make sure that we do things by the book. But other than those two items that have popped their head up, I think the general consensus in the community, and I would say this, a bit of a bold statement, is we've been a partner. We've been a partner to a lot of people in the community, whether it's using our facility without costs or whether it's inviting people in to raise money and do better. We have been a good partner in your community. And for that, we are grateful because it's the community that make us what we are today.
Absolutely. And not just now, but for the past 50 years, you've been a cornerstone of the community and certainly brought in lots of jobs and opportunities to our community as a whole. And it's nice to see it being refurbished and returning back to its glory days when it was an absolute hub of activity, and under different circumstances now. It's great to see that returning. Excitement was certainly in the air last night. And we, as you've seen, council and staff have been very supportive as you move forward. We certainly recognize all the commitments you've made to our community. We appreciate it. We appreciate your involvement and inclusion of them. And we do look forward to the detailed plans as we move forward so we can see next steps and how they're going to unfold into our community. So it's exciting times and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last thing I wanted to mention. When we were fortunate enough to get the MZO passed before, there was a councillor that graciously, she came to that last meeting and sadly passed away. And she asked us a very important question if we were paying minimum wage. And I just wanted to state to everyone that we have always paid higher than minimum wage. We just gave a huge raise from between 5 and 7 to 30% raise to our staff, and really appreciate the efforts they're doing. They're really part of this growth and they're really part of the community. So I just wanted to say that we really value them and we really treat them well because we need them and they are a critical part of Kawartha Downs.
Excellent. That's fantastic. No. Any other questions from members of council for either Tom or Richard? If not, very good. Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We do certainly appreciate the update.
Thank you for giving us the time. Thank you, members of council. Thank you as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Can we get a motion then to receive that delegation? We got Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Belch, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Does anybody need a break before we continue? We've had a couple long ones. Okay, 5 minutes. We'll take a recess. All right, members of council, we are back. We are just short a clerk. I did see her, so I know she can't be very far. There she is. Mr. Shaw as well. We're all set to go. Arrangements for supper and evening snacks have been made available. We should be able to wrap it up relatively quick as we go through these reports now. The other part is completed. So, Madam Clerk, as long as you're ready, I will get going with the minutes.
Yes, we are, Mayor McFadden.
Very good. Okay, item number 10.1, minutes of the regular council meeting held June 20th, 2022. I need a motion for those minutes by Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Shaw. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Oh, Councillor Belch, you got on mute. Oh, sorry, Councillor Belch, we're still waiting. You are muted now. We just haven't heard the yep
Yes.
or the no. Go ahead next. Sorry, Madam Clerk.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. All right, minutes from the boards and the committees. Madam Clerk, can I do them together?
No, one has to be approved as presented, which is our first one, Mr. Hack.
Very
And the
good.
next is received.
Motion for Mr. Hack. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Huntley, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item 11.2, Campbell Public Library Board meeting minutes, May 17th, 2022. Motion for those minutes, Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Shaw, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item, reports. 12.1, report finance 2022-12, 2021 reserves and development charges reserve fund. Ms. Pope, welcome. Just actually, before we get started on your report though, you may have missed it, but council, after your last meeting, we've decided that you need to sing your reports to us. A big congratulations and thank you for singing O Canada at the awards. Your voice was absolutely exceptional. We genuinely appreciate it. So we would appreciate it, but you can carry on with speaking your reports.
Thank you. We'll stick to speaking the report for now. I have before you the 2021 Reserve and Development Charges Reserve Fund report. It is and supported by the 2021 audited financial statements presented today by Baker Tilly. In addition to, I have two other recommendations in this report, and it's just a mini update for council. So when the Public Works report came forward for the Cavan Public Works Operations Center, we were investigating with federal gas tax, which is now known as the Canada Community Building Fund. However, they've indicated that there's been a change in their eligibility and that a public works building is no longer eligible. And we had requested council to approve $511,608 to come from that fund. However, during the same conversation, they indicated that our previous Cavan Monaghan Community Center, where we had the overage of the $2.4 million that we've been paying back through the OLG funds, which is down to now $1.5 million as presented today in the audited statements, that we can place it against the outstanding balance there. So we're basically transferring the $511,608 in order to use those funds towards the community center and in turn then free up the OLG funding so that we can use that towards the Public Works Operations Center. So it's just to move between two reserves to ensure eligibility. So that's recommendation number 2 and number 3. I have it before council.
Excellent. Any questions from members of council for Ms. Pope? If none, motion then to receive that report and accept the recommendations. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Shaw, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Ms. Pope, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 12.2, report planning 2022-38, County of Peterborough official plan. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor McFadden, members of council. Planning report 2022-38 is before you today with a series of recommendations regarding the Peterborough County official plan. If you remember, on June 21st, the report was brought before council and there was much discussion about the content of the county official plan. Subsequent to that meeting, staff and some members of council held a meeting with Peterborough County planning staff, and some additional recommendations have been included in the report before you that recognize the results or the content of those discussions. So unless you direct otherwise, I am not planning on reading all of the recommendations to you today.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. In consideration of time, any members of council have any specific questions related to this? The comments have been provided. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Graham.
No, I just wanted to give you some credit, Mayor, that Mayor McFadden and myself attended the meeting with county staff and were very vocal about some of the adjustments that were well received, and then refined even further at the last county council meeting. So kudos to Mayor McFadden for the amount of time and effort put in to ensure that the county OP is the best it can be for, even though we're not in it, but we will be consistent with it. So kudos to you for all that extra work.
Very good. Very, very good. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's nice when our 2 votes go a long way and we get carried. So thank you. I couldn't do it without the support, and we make a great team. So thank you. Any other questions from members of council on this report? If not, I will receive the report and accept those recommendations. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Huntley, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Karen, thank you very much. That has been a long, outstanding item that you've been working on for several years, and we appreciate the efforts. And that is a long list of recommendations, and thank you for not reading them all.
Thank you.
Our next item is item 12.3, Report Planning 2022-39, Delegation of Authority, Site Plan Control. Mr. Connolly, go ahead.
Through your worship. So there we go. Through your worship, you have before you Planning Report 2022-39, Delegation Authority, Site Plan Control. 2 recommendations on this report. The first, that council receive Report Planning 2022-39, Delegation Authority, Site Plan Control. And then secondly, that council approve bylaw number 46 to get delegate authority for site plan control to staff. Staff being the chief administrative officer or delegate, that delegate being the executive director, planning and development. If council will recall, through Bill 109, the More Homes for Everyone Act, that was passed by the provincial legislature, given royal assent in April 14th of 2022. The council had provided comments that was provided to the EBR registry. There are a number of changes in the passing of Bill 109, but the one that's most germane and before you today is focusing on changes that will come into force July 1st, which was last Friday, through amendments to Section 41 of the Planning Act. Those amendments with respect to Section 41 is municipal council required to delegate site plan control decisions to an authorized person. If you will recall, council had done that with previously through a different bylaw with specific stipulations around straightforward applications. This now looks at deleting all those qualifications and for all site plan control decisions. With that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer that.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Questions from members of council? Councillor Huntley.
Through you, Chair. I agree with this thing because we've been working on this for a while, but there was one bullet in the discussion section that kind of perked me up a little bit. And that was the remove the clause that allows, removes the clause that allows a CAO or a member of council to request an application be deferred to council. So that sounds like we're giving up kind of ultimate control. So even if there's something out there that we don't like, we'd rather have, come to council. We don't have the option to do that. Is that how I interpret that?
Mr. Connolly?
Through your worship to Councillor Huntley, that is the case in the sense that those specific stipulations were qualifiers that under the previous bylaw that council had adopted before, and these were qualifications for straightforward applications for site plan control. And it was whether or not, and if you look in the bullets, that was to cover the fact that for 2 and 3 and 4 in those bullet points on the last page of that report were stipulations before for straightforward. So by deleting those clauses, I more or less just essentially through legal counsel indicated that where there were opportunities to have these before council, those are no longer there. And the intent here is under Bill 109 and a series of changes is to expedite approvals and opportunities to be able to speed up the planning process. That was, and the intent there under the legislation was to delegate that to staff. So as it stands now, I know it may be bit of concern for council, but with respect to site plan control, that delegation is in law and legislation and is to staff person. And so in that case, it would be to the CEO or myself.
So through you, Chair, so what you're saying is if staff agrees with the site plan control, council has an issue with it, it doesn't matter, it's approved by staff.
Correct. The way it would work legislatively, that the delegation of approval for site plan control is now, and had to as of July 1st, is now under the Planning Act. It had to be delegated to council to a staff person, an authorized person. In this case, we're saying the authorized person is the CEO or the delegate, and that delegate being myself. Now, for more complex applications, and perhaps, Councillor, if this gives you more comfort, where you have situations where there has to be a site plan agreement, there's no obligation for that to be delegated now under the Planning Act changes, the current ones. So in that case, if there was an elaborate or more complex application, those site plan agreements still go before council. That is not a delegated responsibility as of through Bill 109.
Okay, Councillor Huntley.
I'm not seeing a whole lot of comfort on that.
Still not so sure I'm comfortable with that. Because I'm sure that 99% of the time it's fine, but I'm just thinking there could be some small, what would appear to be a straightforward site plan approval that maybe the CAO or some member of council does take a bit of an issue to, but this seems to handcuff us into not being able to actually bring that forward.
Through your worship to Councillor Huntley, I think again, not all of these changes are perfect in the sense that there are a lot of changes that were proposed in Bill 109 that some advocacy stakeholder groups thought didn't go far enough. Others thought it went too far and wasn't as clear as it could be. I think, again, the intent here with the legislation is for us to bring this forward. We did have this discussion before and brought a bylaw last year with the intent of how could we slowly start to delegate those things, and we've done that a number of times. There hasn't been any particular concern in that respect, but perhaps if you're looking for a safeguard, maybe what we could do is put in something where we could report on the decisions made under the delegated authority, specifically to this one. We'll bring this back to council to give council a flavor or an idea of what decisions are made, what's the likelihood of anything that may cause concern. At the same time, if there's an appeal, like if an applicant has concern with staff's decision or the delegated decision, there's still remedies under the OLT in terms of appealing that to Ontario Land Tribunal. That still does skip council.
Yeah, though. So through you, Chair, I guess. I mean, if the planning department brings back a report that indicates the whatever instances of this where they have taken the authority and approved it without coming to council, that's fine. But at that point, it's too late for council to actually say anything. Like, even if council, gets wind of a site plan approval that's going through staff and they have an issue to it, this removes our right to have it questioned.
Through your worship to Councillor Huntley, you are correct, and I think again, it's not perfect. I think if council was looking for opportunities to be able to do that, the legislative changes no longer permit that. But that said, I think what I'm trying to suggest is ways for council to understand the type of decisions and an idea of how that's tracking. That may not, again, that's cold comfort in looking through the rearview mirror of how that decision was made. The only thing I would say that this is now the law of the land, and we're trying to be consistent with the changes that are there, albeit it may not be perfect. I think what we'd like to do is be able to demonstrate transparency in terms of what those decisions are when those were made. But perhaps the CEO, maybe Ms. Hurley, could suggest another way of sort of addressing that, but otherwise, that's the best I can think of. It is a legislative change that's taken out of council's hand. The notion being that this would be something that would be allowed for expedited decisions and quicker planning process application.
Very good. I think the long and the short of it, Councillor Huntley, was this was non-negotiable and it's already been passed. Continue the discussion.
I didn't want to be so cavalier, but I think, again, I think your point is well taken. I think overall, when I look at other jurisdictions and I look at certainly from the Professional Planners Association, I think their concern is that they like to look at the idea of being able to expedite and save time when we talk about planning process, especially the idea of bringing 1.5 million houses over the next 10 years into control. Typically, site plan control is where the official plan amendment and the zoning are in place to allow the permitted use. And in those cases where those are there and situated, there is a lot of decisions, and I can't think of a time in which council would have overturned staff's decision on that. But I think, again, the comfort may be that on more complex things where the site plan agreement is required for that kind of approval, that would still remain going forward to council. But I think that's as much comfort as I may be able to give you.
All right. There you go. Councillor Huntley's looking warm and fuzzy. Over to Deputy Mayor Graham. Been very patient holding your hand up.
Yeah, well, the digital one is a little lighter. So I guess my question is to you and through you, Mayor, to Mr. Connolly. What percentage would you say, just based on an estimate, of subdivisions wouldn't require a site plan agreement?
Well, through your worship, to Deputy Mayor Graham, when we get into site plan control, we've already gone through, so plans of subdivision are approved by the county. So council will have seen a number of different iterations. So in the sense that it will have gone through council, if it's official plan amendment, zoning, or plans of subdivision, we know that county council makes a final decision on official plan amendments, as well as plans of subdivision. Zoning is final decision lays with township council. So if it were a plan of subdivision going forward, there would have been a number of touch points, opportunities for the township and council to be able to see what's happening, make some, provide input, add to that decision making. Site plan control would be, in that situation, that scenario, would be after all of those things that happen. And then if you have an application that just only requires site plan control, the intent there is that that's because the official plan and zoning are already in place to permit that use.
Right. So I guess the long and the short of it is, as the mayor already sort of summarized, that, we had already taken efforts and made plans and adjusted our bylaw to expedite the process where appropriate, unless deemed by staff to be of sensitive in nature or unique in nature, making our process already more efficient. And now the province has said, yeah, we know better, and our policies know better, that we can bypass you altogether.
I think the intent is site plan control, because you have those safeguards that zoning and the official plan is in place. The notion is that these are permitted uses. So it's to expedite that particular part. There's a suite of other things, other changes that Bill 109 introduced, which don't come into effect until January 1st. In my report, I touched them, but didn't focus on it. That includes processing of applications in terms of refunds, and the deadline for processing those being 30, 60, 90, 120 days. And those have process implications, but again, the role of council. But that's something we'll bring forward later on, with the idea of a report to council, which may give council more comfort in the fact that they're not being cut out of the decision-making process altogether. But if I could describe it as, this is the low-hanging fruit. In other words, the majority of things that go forward and are approved by site plan, the fact that it goes to council adds a few days to that overall approval. There aren't many situations where council will override staff in terms of either the recommendation or if an approval is recommended. Again, I'm looking at not being able to provide warm or fuzzy.
Very good. Any further questions from members of council? If not, a motion to receive the report and accept the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Shaw, Madam Clerk, record a vote.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Nope.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Oh, come on. You could have made it interesting there, Deputy Mayor Graham. Motion is passed 4-1.
It's interesting enough.
Thank
you, Mr. Worship. Thank you, council.
Next report, 12.4, report Parks and Facilities 2022-02, tender approval T-PFBD 2201, 2 white 1/2 ton crew cab 4x4 pickup trucks. Chris Allison and Wayne Hancock. Now, what if we only approve one? Who gets it?
I got it.
All right, just so we're clear, go ahead, Chris. Whoever speaks.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I have before you Parks and Facilities Report 2022-02, tender approval for 2 white 1/2 ton crew cab pickup trucks. Recommendation that council award the tender to Jim Wilson Chevrolet Buick GMC for the supply of one white half-ton crew cab 4x4 pickup truck for the Parks and Facilities Department in the amount of $61,000 plus municipal HST in the amount of $1,073.60 for a total amount of $62,073.60, which is within the 2022 Parks and Facilities Capital Budget account 0247283910 of 70,000. And number two, that council award the tender to Jim Wilson Chevrolet Buick GMC for the supply of one half-ton crew cab 4x4 white pickup truck for the Public Works Department in the amount of $61,000 plus municipal HST in the amount of $1,073.60 for a total amount of $62,073.60, which is within the 2022 Public Works Department Capital Budget account 0246633910 of 70,000.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Allison. Anybody else want to hear those recommendations again? Questions for Mr. Allison or tough questions for Mr. Hancock? Any? None? Motion to receive the report, accept the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Shaw, Madam Clerk, record a vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Chris, thank you. Wayne, thank you. Next item, report Parks and Facilities 2022-03, purchase of 144-inch wind deck zero-turn mower. Mr. Allison?
I have before you Parks and Facilities Report 2022-03. Purchase of one 144-inch wing deck zero-turn mower. Recommendation is the council approves the tender submitted by Hemming Limited for the supply of one 144-inch wing deck zero-turn mower in the amount of $85,664 plus municipal HST in the amount of $1,507.69 for a total amount of $87,171.69. This is identified in the 2022 capital budget for the Parks and Facilities Department.
Questions from members of council?
It's an expensive lawnmower.
That's a big one. Sorry to put you on the spot, Ms. Pope. I apologize. I don't remember off the top of my head. Is this in addition to the fleet? I guess Chris could answer that too. Sorry.
It is, yes.
It is. What percentage is eligible through the development charges? I apologize. I just don't have it in front of me. There's my understanding additions to the fleet should be close to 100, isn't it?
I don't have the percentage, but $79,200 of it was covered through DCs.
Perfect. Okay, that was what I thought. All right, excellent. I assumed it should be pretty close to 100%, so that's fantastic. Job well done. Thank you, Kimberly, for that, and Chris as well. Can I get a motion then to receive the report and accept the recommendation? Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Belch, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Very good. Motion is approved. Well done, Chris. Next item is report CAO 2022-08 collective agreement QP 1306.8 Parks. Ms. Hurley.
So let's start with corporate services report 2022-11 for the council schedule
I
amendment.
skipped that one. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for keeping me on my toes. You got Yvette all queued up here to go, and it's your turn. My apologies, Ms. Page. Go ahead.
So before council is corporate services report 2022-11, and the recommendation is that council approve the amended 2022 council meeting schedule. I can review the amendments if you'd like, but they're also before you for your consideration.
We are good unless any members of council wants to review it. No. Okay, good. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I thought that was close. Deputy Mayor Graham's going to move it, seconded by Councillor Huntley with a smile on his face. Perfect. Madam Clerk, record vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Motion is approved. I keep looking for your lips moving, Mr. Councillor Shaw, but they're not moving until well after you've already spoke. It's Next is back to Yvette, report CEO 2022.
Here's two.
2022-08 collective agreement QP 1306.8 Parks. Ms. Hurley.
Yes, thank you to council. The recommendations, we have two before you today. I'm very pleased actually to have this report for you today. That council approved collective agreement between the Township of Cavan-Monaghan and the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 1306-8, which is our Parks Department, from April 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2025. And that the bylaw number 2022-48 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the collective agreement between the Township of Cavan-Monaghan and the Canadian Canadian Union and Public Employees, and its Local 1306-8 Parks be approved. It is before you for consideration.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Hurley. And I do want to commend you as well as everybody else that sat in on those negotiations for a job well done. Thank you very much. It did take up a considerable amount of your time and we appreciate it. Questions from members of council for Ms. Hurley? None. Motion to receive the report, accept the recommendation. We have Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Shaw. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Thank you, Ms. Hurley. Next item, report CAO report and capital status. Members of council, any questions on the report before us? I do have a couple. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Mayor, just on two projects that we've looked at, I just wanted to update council. We have been dealing with the alleyway along King Street, and I think we were hopeful that the central property that has been for sale would sell, and that we've had I think 2 pre-consultations or a number of inquiries on that property. It appears we've not had any follow-up. There's been no sale that I'm aware of on the property, and there is that property and one other property that do not want to proceed with an alleyway. So it would be my recommendation to council that we not proceed at this time. I think we need to have something. We need to have a willing developer on the middle property. And it seems that we're sort of spinning our wheels waiting, and I don't think we're going anywhere. So I would like to update council and say let's at least postpone that project and not proceed at this time. And it would be that would be number one. And then the second project that I'd like to speak to you on is the Main Street water main. The Main Street water main, as you're aware, we did receive ICIP green funding this year. It came through latter part of the spring, and with that project, they are wanting the funds spent over the next 3 years, 2022, 2023, and 2024. We have looked at the tender on that project, and we'd like to tender the project late this year to get a better price from the contractors, we believe, and proceed with the works in 2023. So it would be a carryover on the water main part of the project, ensures that we get the funding on that. And we would like to also, probably looking at our budget for 2023, we'd like to look at a new road surface on that roadway rather than road restoration, which is presently included, because the water main, as you might remember from the funding, is only for the water main. So it's 2 projects that I'm looking to update council on. One with a late tender on the water main with monies to be spent for the majority of the construction next year. And the other one is, of course, on the alleyway, which has been with us, and we've looked at it for some time, and we're not really getting anyone buying into that, the property owner in the middle. So we have not found a buyer for the property that's willing to do that.
Very good. I saw the real hand up from Deputy Mayor Graham. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Wayne, question with regards to the alleyway. Can you just refresh my memory as to what the budget, because you said it's been carried forward a number of times, what the proposed budget amount or budgeted dedicated funds were for that project? And is there an alternative project that we're proposing or will be being proposed for the utilization of that fund?
We had in the budget, I believe the number was 95,000. I don't have it in front of me right now for the project. And that was to looking at what we call dedication, or what they call a people willing to give us the right of way to go over the properties, that we would build an asphalt laneway through there. We were talking about a number of things to improve drainage in the area, and generally sort of a cleanup of the site. So that those funds would not be used this year. And quite frankly, without the middle property, and the other property is at the end next to Union Street, without getting those two access points, it's pretty difficult to complete a laneway across the back. So I have not, we've not considered where the funds might be otherwise used. They are there, and I'm suggesting not proceeding, at least till you have a developer on the middle property that's willing to work with you. So it is 95, I believe is the number, and it is, go ahead there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, the monies that were allocated in our budget for capital was 97,800.
Oh, I was close.
You're very close, sir.
And so just to follow up then, so we're just, I guess you are awaiting the determination or direction from council with regards to not moving forward with that project. And then you'll be coming back to council with a report as to potentially replace that project. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Deputy Mayor, what we would do is report on that through our budget process. Deputy Mayor, we would state that those funds will just hold there until our budget process, and then there would be a recommendation that goes before council at that time.
Very good.
But we wanted to let you know that we're not moving because it wasn't identified. It was an identified project for 2022, but so it was, because it was identified, it's important for us to report back to see whether or not that there's any movement on that project.
Thank you.
Okay, on that topic, my understanding is the one property is right at the very end. So I don't understand how it's critical that we wait for it. This has been ongoing for quite some time. So if we can't get agreement, the alleyway needs some work. I understand there's an issue with somewhere in the middle. I'm not going to get into that discussion in open session, but I'm not ready to abandon it yet. I'd like to know who the individual or that person is and see about the negotiations or the discussion. But this is awful to sidetrack the whole discussion on an alleyway where we're trying to improve it based on someone in the middle. And I don't understand the value on the end. It's nice to have, but I don't see that as critical unless I'm missing something.
So from your point, you're saying let's continue on with the project and hope that we have a developer or someone that actually purchases the property in the middle as a willing host for the laneway. That's your thoughts on this, Mr. Mayor?
I was thinking of just going off of Tupper and go as far as that property. I'm not going to wait for that property any longer. We've been waiting long enough for that property to hold up the whole project. I think there's value in an alleyway that goes from Tupper over to that property. And if there's an issue with somebody in between, don't let me know in open session, but I'd like to understand who that individual is is causing the holdup. I'm sure some good discussions can get that moving. It's to the betterment of every one of those property owners to proceed. I'm not waiting for that current property that's up for sale. That's a whole other topic.
So maybe, Mr. Mayor, through you to council, it's reasonable that we bring a plan in showing where the laneway could be built and bring that back with the pieces that are missing, and that you would see that and we try and bring that to the next council meeting.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Yep.
Okay.
And on the other topic, that's fine for now. We're just proceed. Thanks for the update on Main Street. Okay. I was going to add, there was a topic that came up during the county official plan, so I just wanted to get it added into this list if council will indulge me. With regards to permitting cross-border services into the township of Cavan-Monaghan, the county has put in their OP, their new OP to be approved, that any cross-border services, either an upgrading or expansion of municipal services, would require an official plan amendment at within the Cavan-Monaghan official plan, which all sounds fine. However, we don't have a clause within our own official plan that requires an official plan update. So the county recommended that we do an amendment to our own official plan now, which should take on the order of 2 to 3 months to ensure that any cross-border servicing would require an official plan update. And so that would be the direction, and that came out of the county official plan. So if you have any questions, by all means, for sure, but that was the direction that I was going to provide. But I will open it up for council if you have any questions or discussion on that topic. None. Okay. Ms. Hurley, you're clear on the discussion because we have talked about that relative to what needs to get done with official plan amendment, and time is of the essence. So we're hoping to get that done in the next couple months.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am aware, and you did share that information with me. So I'm happy to add that to the list, and I will talk to the planning department about moving that forward.
Very good. Madam Clerk, do you want that in a motion? Are we good with that?
We can incorporate that into the motion that we're going to have where we receive this information, so we can just make it all one motion.
Okay, very good. And just a question for Wayne. I've had several inquiries. What is going on with regards to the landscaping, more specifically the trees in Tower Hill South?
Mr. Mayor, just I think an update. One, we've been receiving ongoing emails from Tower Hill, from their representatives there. And the particular problem appears to be the issue of locates. This is a situation that started last fall, probably was visited even before that, and it's actually a case that it's filed with a nonprofit body called One Call, and then the locates in this area for the most part are done by ProMart, and it appears to be either a manpower shortage or something that's happening with ProMart, in that the locates are not being done. They're not being done on a timely basis. And this is, I think it's a serious situation in Tower Hill South, because we're ending up having to postpone plantings and things that should have been done probably last year. We're now in the middle of summer, which is the hottest time period to be planting. And it's probably something that now should be postponed till September, October this year. So people in the subdivision don't understand what's happening. They don't understand why our landscaping is not completed in the park, and they don't understand on the road allowance. And the most recent email from the representative at Tower Hill said that they only had 3 of 9 or 10 locate requests completed. That means that you're getting partial completions of a request that should have been done in one day. So I think it's a matter that has to go back to the organization, the nonprofit organization, saying that this system was set up to expedite matters, and there should be timeframes set where these responses are given. And if you talk to the general construction industry, this is a problem in the industry. It's taking 6 to 8 weeks for a contractor to get a locate on any digs around a public road allowance, whether it be on public or private. So we have to change the system somewhere. And if it's a case that one company has the locate responsibility for all the utilities, being Enbridge, Bell, Hydro, then they've got to provide the manpower. So this has not got any better. And this is a situation that existed prior to COVID, during COVID, and is now with us after COVID, or for the most part after COVID. So we can't do anything. We're just waiting, and everyone's looking around, sort of trying to answer questions to residents about why you have no trees in the subdivision. And it's really, this is a situation that the emails, there's probably between our CAO and the developer, there's probably a dozen emails going back and forth trying to prioritize this. And it's not fair. It's not reasonable. So something has to happen with One Call. Something has to happen with the companies doing them.
Very good. Excellent. May I suggest then that we send a motion on behalf of council for a meeting with the appropriate minister? I believe it will be infrastructure, but I will leave that open just to be confirmed. But that we request a meeting relative to discussion on locates, in that they are taking too long, because by the time we get them lined up, then you don't have the individuals in place or the contractors in place in order to get the works done. This started last fall, get these trees in place, and it holds up the rest of the completion of the development. If we're going to be building 1.5 million homes over the course of the next 10 years, I would hope that we have a system in place that we can actually get locates done, that it doesn't take several seasons in order to get them in place. So I think it is an important matter. So I would like our council to endorse a letter to send off to the Minister of Infrastructure, with copies going to the Minister of Red Tape, as well as a copy to the Premier, outlining our frustration with the amount of time that it's taking for this One Call organization to get the locates returned. Speaking from my own personal experience, I did locates about 20 years ago for Consumers Gas at the time, now Enbridge, and they were called in one day and done the next day. So that's how much our system has changed over the course of 25 years that now we're taking 6 to 8 weeks. You're lucky to get anything done. In this case, even longer. So if council would indulge me, I would suggest that would be a motion that we send off to the minister. I got it. Councillor Shaw and Deputy Mayor Graham. Any discussion on the motion, Councillor Hunley?
Oh, good.
Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, are you clear on that specific motion for the contacting the minister?
Is the CAO and their Director of Public Works?
We're
I
fine.
didn't know, okay. And do you want me to combine this all into one motion? So we'll have the amendment to the OP regarding the border services, as well as this letter, as well as the capital, or do you want them all broken out individually?
Whatever makes your life easier, Ms. Page, I am fine with.
Is there any more motions coming?
That's it.
I think that we're clear then, as long as staff's comfortable with that.
We're good.
Good. Madam Clerk, recorded vote?
So we'll just keep Councillor Shaw and Deputy Mayor Graham. Are you comfortable with that as well? Wonderful.
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Perfect.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Council. Next item, Council Committee verbal reports. Councillor Belch.
Nothing to report at this time.
Very good. Deputy Mayor Graham.
No, unfortunately, due to a quorum issue, we couldn't hold Miller Valley Trail, so we will be adjourned until the end of this, or until after the summer.
Very good. Councillor Huntley.
Just a big kudos to staff for pulling off both the county awards and a wonderful Canada Day exhibition for the staff, for everybody. It was wonderful.
Very good. Councillor Huntley, well said. And furthermore, because our next meeting won't be till August, a big thank you for all the coordinating that's going into place. And I'm sure what will be an absolutely fabulous event on the 23rd of July at Kawartha Downs for the Derby Day. So again, thank you. Kudos to staff. It's a lot of time and effort, and we do appreciate it. I do have a couple takeaways from the library board. First, the library will be coordinating with the township on promoting Wi-Fi at the CMCC when the library is closed. Number two, statistics increased on the reach and interactions on Facebook and social media during May of 2022. And finally, that work on the strategic plan implementation is continuing with some targets already underway. And those are my takeaways from the library. Any other items? If not, motion to receive the verbal reports. Councillor Shaw, Deputy Mayor Graham, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Motion is approved. There is no general business, no correspondence for information, no correspondence for action. We will move then into our bylaws. And Madam Clerk, before I start, all three are valid today, correct?
Yes, they are, Mayor McFadden.
Very good. Bylaw number 2022-46 being a bylaw to appoint the officers and employees for the purpose of site plan approval under section 41 bracket 4.0.1 of the Planning Act and to affect related amendments to bylaw number 2007-20 and 2021-57 and bylaw number 2022-47 adoption bylaw for official plan amendment number 11, bylaw number 2022-48 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a collective agreement between the Township of Cappamonigan and the Canadian Union of Public Employees and its local 1306-8 Parks Unit be read a first, second, third time, signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Belch, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. There is no unfinished business, no notices of motion. Confirming bylaw being bylaw number 2022-49, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held July 4th, 2022, be read a first, second, third time, signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Shaw and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Councillor Huntley and Deputy Mayor Graham. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, meeting is adjourned. Upcoming meetings, our next regular council meeting is Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. Everybody have a safe